Chapter 2240. Anyu's words were very provocative, causing Ling Xian's heart to heat up. After all, this was also his idea, and the goal of the entire demon race. He pondered for a moment, then said to Anyu with a serious expression, "Lord Anyu, I believe this is your original intention, and you have the ability to do so. At the same time, this has always been my race's wish, and we have the same goal. But, before we decide to cooperate, I have a few questions that I hope you can answer." Anyu nodded slightly, looked at him calmly, and said, "Please speak." Ling Xian did not beat around the bush, and said directly, "The first question, Lord Anyu only has 80 guards under his command. Although those guards were all very powerful, there were simply too few of them. You also know that the continent is vast, and there are billions of living beings." Anyu had expected him to ask this question, and could not help but reveal a confident smile, and explained, "I have already prepared for this question. As long as you demons are willing to cooperate, I will gather more people. Now there are 80 powerhouses, and soon there will be 800. Even if we succeed in conquering a large territory, the number can still rise to 8,000, or even 80,000. Also, although my race is few in number, you demons have many. This is also the reason why I want to cooperate with you. Most importantly, you don't have to do everything by yourself to rule a territory. Using people to control people is the best strategy." Ling Xian nodded, expressing his agreement, and continued to ask, "The second question, where did Lord Anyu come from? On this continent, we have never seen you or your subordinates. Since we want to cooperate, we have to be honest, at least you can't hide your origin." Anyu immediately frowned, his eyes became cold, and said in a cold voice, "Haha, this answer, is it really that important? We come from the ground, we come from the sky, or from the underworld." Ling Xian immediately understood what he meant, and bowed slightly, saying, "Sorry, I was rude. Since Lord Anyu is not willing to tell, then let's forget about it. The third question, if we start to cooperate, how will we distribute the troops? How will we distribute the territories that we have conquered?" Anyu sneered, "Very simple, in the early stage of cooperation, we will allocate 500,000 demon warriors for me to use. As for the territories that I will invade, I will first choose a territory as my base camp. The territories that were subsequently occupied would be divided according to the amount of contribution. If it's not clear, then we'll split it in half." Ling Xian immediately frowned and said in a deep voice, "Senior Anyu, our clan has just gone through a war that lasted for several years, and we lost over 10 million warriors. Now that we've just started working together, isn't it a bit too much for you to ask for 500,000 warriors? Is there a lot?" Anyu looked at him from the corner of his eyes and sneered. "I only need 500,000 warriors in the early stages. Once we reach the middle and late stages, I might need another 5 million warriors. If you don't even give me 500,000 warriors, then there's no need for us to cooperate." Ling Xian hurriedly waved his hand and said in a serious tone, "No, what I mean is that as long as you show enough sincerity, I can give you 500,000 warriors." Anyu sneered. "Sure enough, there are conditions. Tell me." Seeing that the time was right, Ling Xian revealed the plan he had decided on long ago. "First of all, I would like to ask Lord Anyu to return the 5 regions of the south, as well as the 200+ tribes of my clan. My clan will choose a more suitable territory to be your headquarters." Anyu frowned and asked, "Where?" Ling Xian smiled. "South of Dark North Mountain, there's a region with a radius of 1,000,000 kilometers called the 72 cities. There are 1 billion people there, 72 majestic cities, and endless mountain ranges. There are countless cultivation resources hidden there." Anyu had studied the map of Shunwu continent and knew that this region was indeed more fertile than Dark North Mountain. He couldn't help but be tempted, and after a moment of consideration, he nodded. "All right, as long as you send 500,000 warriors, I can take down the 72 cities in half a month." Ling Xian nodded in satisfaction and continued, "Aside from this matter, Lord Anyu needs to kill one more person in order to show enough sincerity." "Kill who?" Anyu frowned and sneered. "Could it be one of the 3 war gods? If that's the case, then forget it." Ling Xian hurriedly shook his head. "Of course not, it's just a small war saint. That young war saint is called Ji Tianxing, and he's the leader of Tianzhu Peak. You've studied the situation of the continent, so you should know that Tianzhu Peak is not far from the 72 cities. Furthermore, Tianzhu Peak's territory, population, and resources are much more abundant than the 72 cities. And you thought for a moment and smiled knowingly. This seat remembers now. I heard that the fiend army was defeated at the hands of this guy. You guys call him the killing god, and he's the one who slaughtered millions of demon warriors. Ling Xian nodded with a gloomy expression and said in a cold voice, "That's right, it's him. My clan has a blood feud with him, and we can't live under the same sky. And you didn't care at all. If that's the case, then I'll agree to help you kill him to show my sincerity. However, after I kill him, I still want to take over Tianzhu Peak. At that time, Tianzhu Peak and the 72 cities will belong to me." Ling Xian had also guessed that An Yu was insatiably greedy and would make such a request. He took advantage of the situation and said, "Tianzhu Peak can belong to you, but we want Ji Tianxing's corpse and his sword." An Yu nodded without hesitation and smiled. "If that's the case, then it's settled. The deadline will be 10 days. Within 10 days, I will kill Ji Tianxing. As for you guys, you have to gather 500,000 warriors as soon as possible. I still have to lead them to open up new territory." After he finished speaking, An Yu laughed heartily and stood up to leave. He left the meeting hall with 2 black-armored guards and flew towards the warship in the sky. Ling Xian, Ba Tuor, and a dozen demon generals all stood up to send him off. After a long time, the pitch-black warship in the sky flew away. Only then did Ling Xian and the rest relax. Everyone's expressions became serious, and Ba Tuor was filled with resentment. He couldn't help but complain. "Despicable. That guy is too arrogant. He doesn't even put my clan in his eyes. He only has 80 guards, so what right does he have to talk about cooperating with my clan and even divide the world? Even if his strength is not bad, he's too arrogant. Does he think that the 3 divine kingdoms are pushovers? That he wants to conquer the entire Shenwu continent? Isn't that just wishful thinking?" A dozen demon generals all nodded and agreed with Ba Tuor. They were very unhappy with An Yu's arrogant attitude. Ling Xian waved his hand and sneered. "You stubborn guys, do you know what expediency is? An Yu is ambitious, greedy, and insatiable. Let them stir up the wind and rain, and help us get rid of the enemy." Chapter 2241. Hearing Ling Xian's words, Ma Tuor and the other generals came to a realization. It turned out that the ancestral godfiend had other plans. The cooperation with An Yu was only a temporary measure. With the ancestral godfiend's strength and arrogance, why would he care about these foreign races? After figuring this out, everyone's emotions calmed down a lot. After whispering to each other for a while, everyone dispersed and left the conference hall one after another. Ling Xian was the last to leave. Not long after he walked out of the meeting hall, he met a woman in a black robe at the corner of the corridor. This woman was 7 feet tall and had delicate features. Her skin was light purple, and she looked no different from a demon. However, compared to a real demon, her body was petite and weak. However, her black robe was embroidered with the image of a skeleton and a demon. It was obvious that she was an internal affairs officer of Dark North Palace. After seeing Ling Xian, she bowed respectfully and said, "This subordinate greets the great devil sage." Ling Xian nodded and calmly said, "Aku, go and pass on my orders. Summon the chiefs of the Baiye, Secret Flame, and Jialuo tribes to Dark North Palace for an audience." The woman called Aku cupped her hands and bowed. This subordinate obeys. After bowing, she did not seem to have any intention of leaving. After hesitating for a while, she carefully asked, "Great Devil Sage, I just saw a huge flying ship arrive in the sky, and a few strange-looking fellows flew down from it. Are those the foreign powerhouses who invaded the 5 southern regions and took away more than 200 of our tribes?" The Great Devil Sage did not hide anything and nodded. "That's them." Aku frowned and pretended not to understand. "Why did they come to Dark North Palace? Are they here to ask for peace? Or, do they want to negotiate a temporary truce with you?" The Great Devil Sage shook his head and sneered. "Those foreign races are powerful and ambitious. They actually want to cooperate with us to divide Shunwu continent. Ah! Aku revealed a startled expression before covering her mouth and chuckling. Isn't that too laughable? No matter how strong they are, they only have so few people. They actually want to divide the entire continent. The brains of these strange races must have been flooded with water. How did you reject them? Could it be that you directly chased them away? Great Demon Saint glanced at her and shook his head. Of course not. Wouldn't it be a pity if we don't make use of such a greedy and ambitious fellow? A strange light flashed in Aku's eyes. He frowned and asked in surprise, Great Devil Saint, do you really agree to cooperate with the pagans? Why not? The Great Demon Saint walked towards the end of the corridor and said, if you want to work with us, you have to show us enough sincerity and work for us. I asked him to attack the 72 cities and make them his headquarters. Return the 5 regions in the south to my race. In addition, he still had to kill his way to Tianzhu Mountain and get rid of that bastard Ji Tianxing. This is called killing someone with a borrowed knife without shedding any blood. At this point, the great demonic saint had already reached the end and was about to turn and leave. Aku's body suddenly stiffened, and a strong sense of anxiety flashed through his eyes. She hurriedly chased after the great demonic saint and persuaded, Great Demonic Saint, you are a wise expert. How can you be deceived by those pagans? They are using our race to help them invade our territory and plunder our wealth and resources. Moreover, they have killed millions of our people and invaded more than 200 of our tribes. This is a blood feud. Now that you have agreed to cooperate with them, won't you disappoint those innocent people who died in vain? Hearing her words, the great demonic saint stopped and turned to look at her with a cold and solemn expression. Aku. Don't forget your identity. The great demonic saint stared into Aku's eyes and said indifferently, don't forget that you are just a lowly blood-robed guard. Although you are the most outstanding and quick-witted of all the blood-robed guards, I have appreciated you. It was I who appreciated your talent and promoted you step by step, allowing you to become the Internal Affairs Deacon today and enter Beiming Palace. But don't forget that you are just a lowly Internal Affairs Deacon. Since when did you have the right to interfere in government affairs? The so-called blood-robed guards were originally puppets that the demon kings had captured from other continents using magical treasures and refined in the Blood Sea abyss. Now that 3 years had passed, most of the blood-robed guards had died in battle. They had either died in the line of duty or died tragically on the battlefield. Only a few of the blood-robed guards had survived, but they were all outstanding individuals. Among them, the most outstanding blood-robed guard was this woman named Aku. In the past 3 years, not only had her strength increased a lot, but she had also become very quick-witted, which was why the great demonic saint had placed her in an important position. However, the great demonic saint was naturally suspicious. When he saw that Aku was a little too talkative today, he immediately became angry and reprimanded her. Seeing that the great demonic saint was angry, Aku revealed a look of fear and trepidation. She quickly bowed and said, the great demonic saint is right. This subordinate knows her mistake and has overstepped her boundaries. The great demonic saint looked at her coldly and said in a deep voice, in the future, you must be careful with your words and actions. Only then can you live a long life. I have to teach you a lesson for today's matter so that you will remember. Go to the torture department and receive 50 soul punishment whip. Aku's body suddenly trembled, and her expression became quite unsightly. In the past few years in the North Underworld Mountain, she had experienced the cruelty of the torture department several times and the terrifying power of the soul punishment whips. Almost every once in a while, someone would be punished and their divine soul would be shattered by the soul punishment whips, dying on the spot. She had been hit several times by the soul punishment whips. Although she had kept her life, the pain and torture that went deep into her soul made her shudder. When the great demonic saint saw that she was standing there in a daze, he frowned and shouted angrily, "What are you standing there for? Why aren't you getting out of here? Do you want me to execute you?" Aku immediately came to her senses and quickly bowed to leave. The great demonic saint coldly watched her leave. When her figure disappeared at the end of the corridor, he frowned and muttered to himself, "This bitch is getting more and more presumptuous." After entering the North Underworld Palace, She actually dares to talk about and interfere with the government affairs. Thinking of this, he raised his hand and released a purple light, as if he was releasing some kind of signal. After a while, a hazy and distorted black shadow appeared behind him with a swoosh sound. The black shadow bowed and said in a hoarse and deep voice, "Greetings, Master. Please give me your orders." The great demonic saint's back was facing the black shadow, and he said expressionlessly, "Kang Ying, secretly watch a coup and see what that bitch wants to do. If there is anything unusual, immediately report to me." "Yes, Master." The black shadow called Kang Ying cupped his hands and disappeared into thin air. Chapter 2242. North Underworld Mountain. Jingshan Region's 100 Origin City. On the surface, this ancient city with 1,000 years of history was still peaceful. More than 800,000 demon civilians lived in the city built with black rocks. It was a prosperous city. But in reality, this city had been occupied by a new long ago. The city lord and the priests of the major tribes were all under Anu's control. Moreover, this city had become Anu's temporary residence. At this moment, in the majestic city lord's mansion, Anu was standing in the middle of the square, giving out orders with a solemn expression. In front of him, 9 black-armored foreign race guards stood in a row. The leader was the captain of the guards, Anu's confidant. The 9 of them stood respectfully, listening to Anu's orders. In the sky above the square, a black warship that was thousands of feet long floated, emitting a solemn and murderous aura. Anu's sharp gaze swept across the 9 guards, and he said in a dignified tone, "There are too many things that I can't be bothered to explain to you. All you need to know is that if our race wants to establish a foothold here and develop, we can only rely on others. Even if we know that we will be at a disadvantage, we can only compromise. Temporary forbearance is for our long-term development. This world sealed by a mysterious force is far more fertile than the world we invaded before. If we can occupy this world, we can spend the next 1,000 years in peace, and we won't have to wander the stars anymore." The 9 guards bowed and said in unison, "Captain, please rest assured that we will complete the mission perfectly." Anu nodded in satisfaction and said, "That martial sage named Ji Tianxing, since he can occupy a territory and kill millions of demons, he must have some tricks up his sleeve. Although all of you are elites and are piloting my warship, you must not underestimate him. Remember, not only must you kill him, but you must also return unharmed." The 9 guards bowed again and said in unison, "We understand." Anu did not say anything else. He waved his hand and ordered, "All right, you may set off. I will wait for your triumphant return and bring back that kid's body and sword." The 9 guards bowed in unison, then stepped into the sky and boarded the black warship. Not long after, the black battleship flew high into the sky and headed south as fast as lightning. Anu watched as the battleship disappeared into the horizon. Only then did he turn around and return to the city lord's mansion to continue handling his affairs. It was noon. Pillar of Heaven Mountains. The warm sunlight shone on the mountain peak, and the blue sky was filled with white clouds. Everything was peaceful. The disciples focused on their cultivation while the patrolling guards did their duty. Huanglong Daoist and the 2 elders were discussing the expansion of the Spirit Beast Garden in the study room. Ji Tianxing was meditating in a secret room in his residence in the Pillar of Heaven Palace. He came back a few days ago. Only Huanglong Daoist and a few elders knew about it. When Huanglong Daoist saw him, he was keenly aware of the change in him and was shocked speechless on the spot. Only Huanglong could see that Ji Tianxing's strength had increased several times in the 1 month that he had been missing. He couldn't figure out how Ji Tianxing did it. But he absolutely believed that no matter what miracle happened to his master, it was only natural. As for Yi Liushui's matter, he didn't ask about it. He believed that his master would have a corresponding countermeasure and plan. What he needed to do was to protect the Pillar of Heaven Mountains and listen to his master's orders at any time. Unknowingly, 2 hours had passed. The sun was setting in the west. The warm sunlight made people feel even more lazy. Huanglong Daoist and the 2 elders finally agreed on a plan and left the study room together. At this moment, a loud bugle horn sounded in the sky. On the dojo in the middle of the holy city, a signal arrow shot into the sky and exploded in the sky, releasing a dazzling flame. Huang Long Daoist and the two elders stopped in their tracks. Their expressions changed and they frowned. Is this a signal to warn of danger? Normally, the guards on the dojo will only release the signal arrow when there is a strong danger. What's going on? Is there a strong enemy invading our sect? The three of them looked at each other and revealed a worried and confused expression. Let's go and take a look, Huang Long Daoist ordered. He hurriedly brought the two elders out of the palace and flew into the sky. As soon as they arrived in the sky, the three of them saw a huge black shadow floating in the sky to the north of the Pillar of Heaven Mountains. From afar, the long black shadow looked like a huge ship, but it also looked like a magic treasure flying boat. It floated thousands of feet above the peak of Mount Li. It was shining with a faint white light and emitting an extremely powerful aura. Even though they were far apart, Huang Long Daoist could feel a huge pressure. He brought the two elders across the sky to the north of the peak of the mountain and observed the black warship from a close distance. With his eyesight and knowledge, he couldn't recognize what kind of flying boat it was. Even the words, pictures, and flags on the flying boat were unfamiliar to him. However, that powerful and heavy pressure still lingered in his heart, giving him a bad premonition. At this moment, the warship slowly turned around and aimed its left side at the Pillar of Heaven Mountains. Ka. With a series of crisp sounds, the metal plate on the black warship opened up, revealing a row of holes. Every hole was as thick as a water bucket. Inside the holes, there were dark red dots of light. Huang Long Daoist and the two elders frowned. They were filled with doubts. The guards gathered from all directions, as well as a large number of disciples, frowned as they observed the warship. They started to whisper to each other. None of them had seen this warship before. They didn't know its power or use. However, everyone knew that the heavenly dome array left behind by Grandmaster Kenshin protected the Pillar of Heaven Mountains. No matter what kind of monster came, they could forget about invading the Pillar of Heaven Mountains. In the next moment, an earth-shattering explosion that sounded like a thunderclap from the ninth heaven suddenly exploded in the sky. Boom! On the left side of the black warship, the row of dark red holes suddenly shot out hundreds of dark red light pillars. They shot towards the Pillar of Heaven Mountains like lightning. Before anyone could react, the hundreds of dark red pillars of light slammed into the grand formation in the sky. Kaboom! Amidst the earth-shattering sound, a dazzling silver shield with a radius of 500 miles appeared. This silver shield that covered the sky was like a huge canopy. It was like an indestructible fortress that enveloped the entire Pillar of Heaven Mountains. The light shield was semicircular and was about a foot thick. It was formed by the condensation of bright starlight. It emitted a vast, cold, and mysterious aura. Obviously, the heavenly dome array was activated when the Pillar of Heaven Mountains was attacked. Even though the heavenly dome array was powerful, the silver light shield's defense was very strong. However, after being hit by the hundreds of dark red light pillars, the entire silver light shield shook violently. Layers of silver light rippled. Chapter 2243. Originally, only half of the disciples and guards had heard the dangerous sound of the horn. There were only about 300 people who had gathered in the sky to observe the battleship. However, after the heavenly dome array was bombarded by the battleship, the earth shook and the mountains shook. Most of the people were awakened. Other than those who were in seclusion and could not come out, almost everyone rushed out. Everyone was filled with doubts and worries. They rushed out of their houses and palaces anxiously and gathered in the open space and in the sky. Even the servants and odd-job workers were anxious and ran out to check the situation. After a while, the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains stopped shaking and gradually calmed down. Everyone looked around and saw that the ground on the peak of the mountain had cracked open. The tiles of many houses had fallen to the ground and were broken into pieces. The dojo on the peak of the mountain was shining with a bright silver light. The jade-paved ground was lit up with dense array patterns. Obviously, the heavenly dome array was operating at full power to support the silver light shield and protect the entire Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. Many disciples and guards had drawn their swords and sabers. They looked angrily at the battleship in the sky and roared angrily. What the hell is that? How dare it attack our protective mountain array? Who dares to be so presumptuous in the pillar of heaven's mountains? Are you tired of living? Coward who hides his head but shows his tail. How dare he not show himself? Everyone, don't panic. Listen to the orders of the elders and the great immortal. We will definitely annihilate the enemy. Although the pillar of heaven's mountains was suddenly attacked and caused a huge commotion, the disciples were not afraid. However, the disciples were not afraid. Instead, they were filled with righteous indignation. Everyone was furious and murderous. They could not wait to rush out of the protective mountain array and attack the black battleship. Huang Long Daoist stood in the sky and stared at the battleship with a gloomy look. He felt that something was amiss. A few other elders hurried over and gathered around him, whispering into each other's ears. Great Immortal, which force is that flying ship from? Why would they attack our sect for no reason? Great Immortal, should we rush out of the protective mountain array and launch a counterattack? Huang Long Daoist thought for a while and nodded slightly. The other party is aggressive and the Dharma treasure they used is very strange. Its power is extraordinary. Although the heavenly dome array can protect the sect, we cannot hide in the array. Otherwise, the sect's prestige will be tarnished. The few of you, follow me. I would like to see who dares to behave so atrociously here. Then, Huang Long Daoist held his golden horsetail whisk and led the 4 elders out of the protective mountain array. And flew towards the black battleship. Shua, shua, shua. In the blink of an eye, the 5 of them were high up in the sky, stopping 1,000 jong away from the battleship. Huang Long stared at the battleship with a piercing gaze. With a voice as loud as a bell, he shouted, "Who dares to invade the pillar of heaven's mountains? Tell me your name." The rolling sound waves were like muffled thunder, reverberating in the sky. However, the black battleship did not respond. No one appeared, and no one answered. After about 10 breaths, the hundreds of dark holes on the left side of the ship lit up with a dark red brilliance. Seeing this, Huang Long Daoist's face suddenly changed. He quickly shouted, "Get out of the way." The elders also knew how powerful it was. They dodged without hesitation and immediately moved 10 miles away. In the next moment, the hundreds of dark holes burst out with a dazzling dark red light. Boom! With a deafening loud sound, hundreds of dark red light pillars gushed out and hit the silver light shield. Kaboom! Another loud sound that shook the 9 heavens exploded and spread thousands of miles away. The huge silver light shield was smashed into pieces and started to distort and sway. A destructive shockwave spread out in all directions. Huang Long Daoist and the 4 elders were swept away by the shockwave and were sent flying far away. The 4 elders were relatively weak. They were all bleeding from their 7 orifices and almost fainted. Only Huang Long Daoist, who was a martial sage, could withstand the power of the shockwave and was only slightly injured. The pillar of heaven's mountains was also hit and trembled violently. Countless cracks appeared on the ground, and cracks also appeared on the surrounding cliffs, causing countless rocks to fall down. Even though the silver light shield had blocked the attack of the dark red light beam and shattered the light beam into fiery fragments that filled the sky. However, the surface of the silver light shield was also covered with dense cracks, like a spider web. There was no doubt that if the silver light shield was hit 2 more times, it would be broken on the spot. Inside the protective formation, countless disciples were shaken and fell to the ground miserably. Everyone looked up at the sky and saw the cracks on the silver light shield. They were shocked and exclaimed, "Oh my God! Our mountain-protecting grand array was actually blasted apart. How is this possible? That black flying boat is actually so powerful. It's over. Once the protective mountain array is broken, who can protect us? That flying ship's power is too terrifying. If not for the protective mountain array, the entire sacred city would have been destroyed." In an instant, everyone's hearts were clenched and filled with fear and worry. After all, the most powerful Huang Long Daoist and the 4 elders were injured by the shockwave before they could even see who it was. At such a critical moment, no one knew how to deal with it. At this moment, the black battleship turned around and aimed its right side at the pillar of heaven's mountains. Ka. The black cover on the side of the battleship opened and revealed a row of crossbow cannons. Those crossbow cannons were all made of metal, and there was a powerful array at the base. There were 3-foot-long silver spears inserted. Each spear was as thick as the mouth of a bowl and was made of silver metal. They shone with silver-white starlight. Once these spears hit their targets, they would explode with terrifying power and destroy everything within a 1,000-mile radius. These were the star crossbows. The 3-foot-long crossbow arrows were made of star mithril, and the array at the base was also a sacred array that could continuously absorb the power of the stars. Even a martial sage would not dare to take the attack of the star crossbows head-on. Otherwise, they would die. Huanglong Daoist and the disciples of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains had never seen the star crossbows before and did not know the power of these weapons. But when they were pointed at by the star crossbows, they instantly felt a sharp killing intent and a chill ran down their spines. No one doubted that when the hundreds of crossbow arrows shot over, the heavenly dome array, which was full of cracks, would be destroyed. The hundreds of crossbow cannons lit up at the same time and were crazily accumulating power. They were about to fire. At this moment, a golden light flew out from the Pillar of Heaven's palace and streaked across the sky like lightning. It came to the center of the dojo and landed on the huge sword Steely. It was a handsome young man in a white robe. He was Ji Tianxing. Chapter 2244. Ji Tianxing's various legendary deeds had already spread across the entire continent. Even the rumor that he was the reincarnation of Kenshin was widely spread across the 3 kingdoms. The disciples of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains had all heard of this news. In the past few years, Ji Tianxing was rarely seen and was often not at the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. Therefore, no one had thought of him just now. Now that he had appeared, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. They now had a backbone and someone to rely on. In everyone's eyes, he was omnipotent and was best at breaking the impossible and creating miracles. He would definitely take care of that strange black battleship in the sky. In an instant, everyone's eyes were focused on Ji Tianxing. They were full of anticipation. Ji Tianxing stood proudly on the sword Steely. His face was solemn as he stretched out both of his hands and formed a mysterious hand seal with a profound technique. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. More than 60 starlight seals were injected into the sword Steely and transmitted to the entire dojo. Suddenly, the jade ground within 100 miles radiated even more dazzling starlight. Buzz. The mountain protection array that enveloped the entire Pillar of Heaven's Mountains also emitted dazzling starlight and sped up. The cracks on the silver light shield also disappeared in the blink of an eye. At the same time, the black battleship lit up with dazzling silver light. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Over 100 star crossbows were fired at the same time. Dense silver light beams shot towards the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. Each streak of silver light was a 10-meter-long star mithril crossbow arrow that contained the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. Bang, 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 bang. Over 100 star crossbow arrows hit the silver light shield at the same time. There was an earth-shattering sound that reverberated through the 9 heavens. The sound shook the heavens and spread across a radius of 10,000 miles. The clear sky was also shattered, and countless pitch-black cracks appeared in the void. Violent and devastating shockwaves spread out in all directions, sweeping away all the white clouds in the sky for thousands of miles. The silver light shield shook violently. The Pillar of Heaven's Mountains also trembled and made muffled rumbling sounds. The dazzling brilliance of the stars obscured the sky for thousands of miles, so dazzling that no one could open their eyes. Such an earth-shattering commotion caused the disciples of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains to be dumbfounded. Their hearts were filled with anxiety. Fortunately, the silver light barrier was not broken. After a long time, the silver light that blotted out the sky gradually dissipated. The gigantic silver light barrier and the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains also gradually stopped trembling. Everything returned to normal. Everyone looked up at the sky again and saw that Ji Tianxing had already flown out of the protective formation. He was flying high up in the sky, carrying an old man covered in blood in each hand. Everyone took a closer look and saw that they were 2 severely injured elders who had already fainted from the shock. Shua, Ji Tianxing carried the two elders and flew back into the silver light barrier. Huanglong Daoist brought the other two severely injured elders and hurriedly greeted him. Ji Tianxing handed the two unconscious elders to Huanglong Daoist and instructed, "Send them to treat their injuries. Without my orders, no one is allowed to leave the protective formation." Huanglong Daoist hurriedly took the two elders and handed them to the guards behind him. He looked at Ji Tianxing worriedly and asked through voice transmission, "Master, who is that guy? Why don't they show up?" Ji Tianxing glanced at the battleship and said coldly, "They are foreign race experts from the depths of the starry sky. 2 months ago, they wandered into the North Underworld Mountain and seized a large territory. Now, they have actually killed their way to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. If I'm not wrong, they are probably colluding with the demon race." Huanglong Daoist suddenly understood and cursed angrily, "They are actually foreign races from other worlds. No wonder they don't dare to show up. Their methods are so strange." In fact, Ji Tianxing had seen countless foreign race experts, deities, and all kinds of strange battleships when he traveled across the galaxy. Only battleships were the most suitable magic treasures for traveling through the starry sky. Not to mention the black battleship in the sky, he had even seen a lot of real divine battleships. He was used to it. However, Huanglong Daoist had never left the world of 5 elements. He could not imagine what the outside world was like. Ji Tianxing did not explain too much. He ordered Huanglong Daoist, "Huanglong, gather all the disciples and work together to operate the Sky Dome Array to protect the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. I will personally meet those foreign races." After saying that, he took out the Sword of Burial of Heaven and flew into the sky in a flash to confront the black battleship. Huanglong Daoist was worried, but he did not dare to disobey the order. He hurriedly ordered all the elders, deacons, and disciples to gather at the training ground. A large number of guards and disciples received the order and immediately rushed to the training ground from all directions at the fastest speed. Everyone followed a special order and position and arranged themselves in a hexagram formation on the training ground. They worked together to release a vast amount of magic power and injected it into the Sky Dome Array. Suddenly, the silver light shield that enveloped the Pillar of Heaven's mountains became brighter and more powerful. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky and looked coldly at the black battleship. His left hand was behind his back and his right hand was holding the Sword of Burial of Heaven. His whole body was filled with battle intent and killing intent. The black battleship stopped attacking temporarily. At the front of the battleship, a black door opened. A non-humankind guard, who was wearing a black armor and had 3 dark golden patterns on his chest, walked out on his 4 hooves. He stood on the observation deck at the front of the battleship and looked at Ji Tianxing sharply. When he saw Ji Tianxing's face clearly, his face instantly changed, revealing a look of great astonishment. "You? Why are you here?" This person was shocked and could not help but exclaim. Moreover, he was speaking in a broken demon language. When Ji Tianxing saw this person clearly, he frowned and a murderous look flashed across his eyes. "The leader of the guards under a new? When did you learn the demon language?" In order to make the other party understand, Ji Tianxing also used the demon language. The leader of the guards then regained his senses and smiled coldly. He said slowly, "Looks like you are the leader of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, the archenemy of the demon race, Ji Tianxing." Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, "That's right, I am Ji Tianxing, the person you are looking for." The leader of the guards laughed even more and said in a mocking tone, "Previously in the starry sky, you were lucky to escape with your life. I did not expect to meet you here today. Maybe this is the will of the heavens. You are destined to die under my sword." Ji Tianxing looked at him indifferently and said in a disdainful tone, "You don't have the right to say that. Ask your master, and you, to come out." The leader of the guards frowned and said coldly, "Kid, you are really arrogant. However, you are just a small martial saint. I can easily kill you." Chapter 2245. The guard captain's words were ambiguous and he did not reveal any information about Anu. However, after Ji Tianxing heard this, he knew what was going on, and the corner of his mouth curled into a sneer. "Hehe, it seems that Anu has underestimated me. He thinks that I am just an ordinary martial sage. He does not know that I am the one who fought with him in the illusionary Spirit Star Corps. Therefore, he only sent his guard captain here. He knew clearly that with Anu's status and arrogance, how could he not show up if he came here personally? How could he allow the guard captain to show off his strength here? He stared coldly at the guard captain and sneered, "Since Anu is not here, all of you shall stay here. None of you shall go back alive." As soon as he finished speaking, his body shone with a dazzling golden light. His body expanded to 10 feet tall and he looked like a god of war in golden armor. Heaven-breaking sword. He formed a sword sign with his left hand and held the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand. He slashed out a giant star sword that was thousands of feet long. Suddenly, the dazzling starlight lit up the sky and turned everything within a few hundred miles white. The giant star sword slashed toward the guard captain with a force that could split the sky and earth. The guard captain had seen how powerful Anu was. His face changed and he looked fearful. He pulled out his long saber and slashed out a dark red saber radiance toward the giant star sword. Kaboom! Amidst deafening noises, the dozens of dark red saber auras were cut apart by the star sword and exploded into thousands of pieces. The giant star sword's power was not reduced at all. It was still dazzling and it hit the black warship. Suddenly, the huge warship was pushed back more than 10 miles. It rolled a few times before it came to a stop. The star sword was shattered, but only a shallow dent was left on the pitch-black warship. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and muttered with a gloomy expression, "Damn it! This warship has surpassed the sacred class and reached the divine class. Is this Anu's warship?" With his current strength, it was impossible for him to break a divine class magic weapon. At this moment, the guard captain flew over from 20 miles away and charged toward Sumo furiously. "Ji Tianxing, give me your life." His voice was like muffled thunder as dark red flames surged in his eyes. He waved his long saber and slashed out 3 shocking saber lights. Ji Tianxing looked at him coldly. He swung the sword of burial of heaven again and slashed out a few more starry swords. 7-star sword. Bang 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 bang. The 700-meter-long stellar swords collided with the dark red saber light with a deafening boom. The saber light collapsed on the spot, scattering fiery fragments all over the sky. However, there were still 4 star swords left. They all struck the guard captain and sent him flying back. He tumbled for 20 miles before stabilizing himself and stopping in midair. Lowering his head, he saw a hideous wound on his chest, abdomen, and left front hoof. Blood kept flowing out of the wound. A piercing pain came, causing the captain's face to twist. His eyes were filled with shock. "In just over 2 months, your strength has actually increased by several times." The guard captain growled in disbelief. He looked at Ji Tianxing as if he had seen a ghost. Ji Tianxing sneered and said, "Since you understand, why don't you come and accept your death?" As he spoke, he turned into a stream of light and rushed toward the guard captain, waving his sword again. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. He used the 9 swords of burial of heaven and slashed out hundreds of sword lights in one breath. He swore to kill the guard captain on the spot. The guard captain was tired of resisting. He waved his long saber crazily and slashed out saber lights all over the sky. However, he still couldn't stop the sword lights. With a series of muffled bangs, he was sent flying by the sword lights again. A few more hideous wounds appeared on his tall and sturdy body, and blood kept gushing out. After the two of them exchanged a few moves, he was forced to retreat more than 100 miles by Ji Tianxing. His left front hoof was also chopped off. His injuries were miserable and he looked very miserable. Seeing this, the disciples of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains cheered excitedly and cheered for Ji Tianxing. The black battleship released the star crossbow again and attacked the mountain guarding formation. At the same time, 4 guards in black armor rushed out from the black door of the battleship and attacked Ji Tianxing. After the 4 guards joined the battle, the pressure on the guard captain was greatly reduced. He finally had a chance to catch his breath and quickly used the dark red light to heal his injuries. After he temporarily suppressed his injuries, he recovered his long saber and joined the battle. He joined forces with the 4 guards to attack Ji Tianxing. The 2 sides fought fiercely in the sky, constantly producing deafening explosions and dazzling lights. The remaining 4 guards stayed in the battleship. They were in charge of controlling the array of the battleship. They took turns to release the star crossbow and the dark red light beam to attack the mountain guarding formation. On the dojo at the peak of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, the Huanglong Daoist and thousands of disciples poured their energy into the mountain guarding formation and tried their best to support it. Every time the star crossbow and the dark red light beam hit the mountain guarding formation, there would be an earth-shattering explosion. However, the power of the mountain guarding formation was endless. The silver light shield was constantly being repaired and it was not broken. The 2 sides were in a stalemate. They wanted to see who could last until the end. Soon, 15 minutes passed. The battleship released more than 80 attacks, but it was still unable to break the mountain guarding formation. The Huanglong Daoist and thousands of disciples were exhausted. Their faces were pale and they were covered in cold sweat. However, they did not dare to relax. They all gritted their teeth and tried their best to hold on. On the other side, in the sky 300 miles away from the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, the fight between Ji Tianxing and the guards was finally coming to an end. In this 15 minutes, the 2 sides had exchanged more than 1,000 moves. 2 of the guards were seriously injured. Their limbs and heads had been chopped off and they were almost exhausted. They did not manage to dodge Ji Tianxing's unique swordsmanship. The scales on their chests were shattered by the sword of the Burial of Heaven and they died on the spot. The other 2 outsider guards were also severely injured, just like their captain. Their hooves and arms were chopped off, and one of them had his head smashed into pieces. However, they were still alive. Their vitality was so strong that it made one's hair stand on end. Ji Tianxing knew that these people were very strange. The power they cultivated was very special. Their bodies were strong but they did not have divine souls. Their fatal weakness was the dark red scales on their chests. The dark golden patterns on it probably represented their strength, realm, or status. The 2 sides exchanged a few more moves. Ji Tianxing slashed out sword radiance and forced the 3 of them to retreat. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he raised his left hand without hesitation and released a bright golden divine flame. God-slaying spear. Chapter 2246. Bang! There was a muffled explosion. The God-slaying spear pierced through the chest of the headless alien guard and his body exploded on the spot. It was like a ball of dark red fire that bloomed in the sky. Thousands of sparks fell from the sky and then gradually dissipated. The strange thing was that the 30-meter-long dark golden divine spear did not dissipate. Under the control of Ji Tianxing, the dark golden spear changed its direction and pierced towards another black-armored guard. Swish! With a flash of golden light, the spear traveled thousands of feet in an instant. Its speed was faster than lightning. This black-armored guard was severely injured and weak. He did not have time to dodge or block the attack. Bang! Another muffled sound rang out. The dark golden divine spear pierced through his chest, shattering the dark red scale armor into pieces. Even his body exploded with a bang, turning into a rain of flesh and blood that rained down from the sky. Only then did the light of the dark golden spear dim and gradually dissipate. Ji Tianxing only used one secret skill to kill 2 black-armored guards. Such a scene caused the guard captain to be filled with shock. His eyes were filled with intense fear. The last bit of fighting spirit that remained in his heart also vanished into thin air. Swish! He turned around and ran without hesitation. Stimulated by the desire to live, he flew towards the black battleship at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, he was like a beam of red light that crossed 80 miles in the sky and rushed to the black battleship. Ka. The black door at the front of the battleship opened. The captain of the guards could not wait to rush in. At this moment, a starry sword light flew from afar and struck the captain of the guards at the door like lightning. At this critical moment, the captain of the guards held the long saber with both hands and slashed at the starry sword light without caring about anything. Bang! With a loud bang, the starry sword broke into pieces and scattered starlight all over the sky. The captain of the guard's long saber was knocked away. He spat out blood and flew back. He crashed into the interior of the battleship and made muffled sounds. With a loud clang, the black door finally closed. Ji Tianxing teleported from afar but was blocked outside the battleship. He frowned and raised the sword of burial of heaven with a grim expression. Then, he slashed down with all his might. God-slaying sword. The burial of heaven's sword glowed with a mysterious black light and instantly expanded to several hundred feet long. It fiercely slashed out a 3,000 feet long dark golden sword. Clang! The giant sword carried the power to slay gods and exterminate demons as it struck the battleship with a loud bang that shook the heavens and the earth. In that instant, the sword of burial of heaven trembled incessantly and emitted waves of mournful cries. The dark golden sword shattered inch by inch into millions of fragments that blotted out the sky. The battleship descended from the sky as well, smashing violently against the foot of a mountain 100 miles away, then smashed into the ground along with a loud boom. The mountain peak 100 miles away collapsed on the spot, turning into ruins. The ground, which was covered with grass and forests, was also smashed into a crater with a radius of dozens of miles by the battleship. Dust and smoke rose into the air. Within 1,000 miles, the ground trembled violently. The mountains shook incessantly, and many ravines cracked open. It was as if a super earthquake had erupted. The ground cracked and caved in one after another, producing loud, muffled rumbling sounds. Such terrifying power and momentum was like the wrath of a god. However, the black battleship was abnormally sturdy. Its defense was so powerful that it left one speechless. Only a palm-wide groove was left on the black metal surface of the battleship. It was 8,000 feet long and half a foot deep. Unfortunately, the black metal was not cut open. The captain of the guards and the 4 non-human guards hiding in the battleship were only dizzy from the impact. They did not suffer any substantial damage. After a while, the battleship flew out of the crater shakily, shaking off countless amounts of soil. Then, with a whoosh, it shot into the sky and fled toward the north. The battleship turned into a black streak of light. It was as fast as lightning and disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianxing hesitated for a while. He looked at the sword of burial of heaven in his hand. In the end, he did not chase after the battleship. He stood in the dust-filled sky, looking at the horizon in the north. His face was grim as he murmured, "It is a pity that the sword of burial of heaven has not recovered to the divine grade. It is still unable to fight against a divine grade weapon. With my strength, I still cannot break the defense of a divine grade weapon. When the sword of burial of heaven recovers to the divine grade, I will definitely cut and use battleship in half." As soon as he finished speaking, the voice of the sword of burial of heaven resounded in his mind. Ouch! My old waist. This is so infuriating. Hurry up and think of a way to help me recover to the divine grade as soon as possible. When that time comes, won't it be like chopping vegetables for me to deal with that broken battleship? We could have killed them, but we could only watch them escape. This is too depressing. Ji Tianxing lowered his head and looked at the sword of burial of heaven. He reached out and touched the cold blade. He said in a low voice, "Don't worry. It won't be long before you get what you want." With that, he waved his hand and shot the sword of burial of heaven out. It turned into a ray of light and flew back into the sword stele at the peak of the pillar of heaven's mountains. Only in the sword stele, with the help of the heavenly array, could the sword of burial of heaven recover quickly. After that, Ji Tianxing stepped into the air and returned to the peak of the pillar of heaven's mountains. He came to the center of the training hall and stood at the top of the sword stele. He looked down at the disciples in the training hall. The Huanglong Daoist, many elders, deacons, and disciples were all sweating profusely. They looked exhausted. However, everyone's face was filled with an expression as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. That battleship was terrifyingly powerful, but everyone worked together to support the array and block the attack of the battleship. Moreover, Ji Tianxing fought alone and killed 4 foreign race experts. He even repelled the battleship. This was a victory that lifted everyone's spirits and filled them with pride. Ji Tianxing's gaze swept across the entire training hall. He said in a dignified and loud voice, "In the past 1,000 years, our sect has been invaded and attacked by countless forces. It's a pity that our sect could not unite and fight against the enemies together. Therefore, Our sect's strength has been damaged and weakened over and over again. But today, everyone's performance is very good. I am very gratified and very satisfied. Whether it is now or in the future, I hope that the disciples of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains can unite and fight against the enemies together. Only in this way can we stand at the peak of martial arts and continue to be glorious forever. The thunderous sound waves rolled across the training hall, shaking everyone's heart and soul. Everyone present couldn't help but raise their heads and puff out their chests, revealing a face full of pride and determination. Everyone's blood was boiling and they were excited. They all looked at Ji Tianxing in awe. At this moment, almost all of the disciples could deeply feel what the honor of the sect was, and what the belief of martial arts was. After that, Ji Tianxing ordered the disciples to go back and rest. The Huanglong Daoist, elders, and deacons also had to treat the injured and deal with the aftermath. Ji Tianxing stayed behind and personally inspected the Heavenly Dome array. He repaired and improved the damaged areas. He had made up his mind to connect the Star Divine Furnace and the Heavenly Dome array. This would increase the power of the Heavenly Dome array by 3 times. This was because he had a premonition that today's incident was just the beginning. Chapter 2247. A day later, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains regained its peace. None of the disciples were injured, but they had used up too much of their magic power, so they were all cultivating. The broken ground on the mountain peak, many of the houses and palaces that had fallen were also repaired by the craftsmen. Only the 4 elders who were seriously injured would have to go into seclusion to recuperate for a few more months. Other than that, everything was back to normal and orderly. Ji Tianxing and Huanglong Daoist started to get busy. The 2 of them had to work together to set up a few sacred grade arrays. 2 of the sacred arrays were to strengthen the defense, while the other 2 were to support the heavenly array. This was a huge and tedious project that would take at least 10 days to complete. Furthermore, it would consume a huge amount of spiritual stones and resources. Luckily, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains was getting more and more prosperous. There was some surplus in the treasury, enough for Ji Tianxing to set up a few arrays. 10 days later, the 4 sacred arrays were set up. Ji Tianxing spent another day to connect the Star Divine Furnace and the Heavenly Array. In this way, the Heavenly Dipper and Earthly Terminus arrays formed by the 108 mountain peaks within the Pillar of Heaven's mountains continuously supplied energy to the Star Divine Furnace. And the Star Divine Furnace also supplied energy to the Heavenly Array, so that the Heavenly Array would never run out of energy. Unless someone could destroy the Heavenly Dipper and Earthly Terminus arrays, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains would gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and become an indestructible fortress. Even if the martial god came personally, he might not be able to break through the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. After dealing with the defensive array, Ji Tianxing entered the Star Divine Furnace again. After the warship bombarded the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, he felt that the situation was critical and the pressure was increasing. He only wanted to smelt the illusionary spirit star core as soon as possible, and then use the 9th heaven cauldron in the Divine Weapon Pavilion to help the Sword of Burial of Heaven become a divine weapon. Only when the Sword of Burial of Heaven becomes a divine weapon, would he be qualified to fight against An Yu and the ancestral demon god. What made him feel gratified was that Chen Yu and the Black Dragon did not slack off. They had both mastered the technique that he gave them and were concentrating on smelting the illusionary spirit star core. After more than a month of smelting, the illusionary spirit star core was obviously smaller, and it was only 180 miles long. The surface of the originally pitch-black stellar core also lit up with a silver light, and it was recovering its luster. Ji Tianxing encouraged Chen Yu and the Black Dragon. Then, he personally cast a secret technique to refine the star core. Even though he estimated that he would only need 3 years to successfully smelt the star core, he still couldn't do anything about it. However, he couldn't wait any longer. 3 years was still too long. If there was a miracle, he really hoped that the star core would be successfully smelted tomorrow. In the southern part of Dark North Mountain. In the 100 origin city of the Jingshan region. In the majestic and dignified city lord's mansion, An Yu's study. He was standing by the window, looking out with a gloomy expression. In the study, the black armored guard captain stood respectfully, not daring to even breathe loudly. The guard captain's left front leg and right rear leg had been chopped off, leaving only 2 legs on the ground. It looked particularly comical. Previously, when he had fled back to 100 Origin City, his injuries had been even worse, and he was in an extremely sorry state. After 10 days of recuperation, his injuries had stabilized, and he had recovered 60% of his strength. After a long silence, Anu spoke in the strange tribe's language and muttered to himself in a low voice, "I never thought that the leader of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain, Ji Tianxing, who killed millions of demon tribesmen, would be that guy. In just 2 months, his strength has increased by several times. It is a miracle. No wonder Ling Xian asked me to kill Ji Tianxing before agreeing to cooperate. That guy is indeed extraordinary. He is only a martial sage, but he is invincible among the martial sages. I only hate that I didn't take him seriously back then and actually let him escape with his life. If I had killed him on the spot at the illusory Spirit Star Core, none of this would have happened." The guard captain hurriedly lowered his head and said with a voice full of self-blame, "My lord, I underestimated the enemy and caused the failure of the mission. I even lost 4 guards. Fortunately, I steered your Wolf Fang battleship and managed to escape alive. Now that we know Ji Tianxing's background, we will definitely not fail the next time we take action." Anu shook his head and revealed a cold smile. He said in a low voice, "No, since we have already failed once, we cannot rashly attack a second time. Ling Xian is despicable and wants to use us to help him eliminate a strong enemy. He wants to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Not only can he get rid of Ji Tianxing, but he can also weaken our strength." The guard captain understood what Anu meant and nodded. "That's right. We are short on manpower, and we only have 80 guards. We cannot sacrifice them so easily. Every death of a guard is a great loss to us. My lord, what do you plan to do next? Are we just going to ignore the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain?" Anu shook his head again and said in a low voice, "Of course not. I want the 72 cities and the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain, especially the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain. I have been flipping through the history of the Shunwu continent recently, and I discovered something very interesting. The founder of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain was the strongest person on the continent more than 1,000 years ago, and he was known as Kenshin. Furthermore, this world has been sealed by the gods, and no one has been able to ascend for tens of thousands of years. Only Kenshin managed to ascend to the god realm. But for some reason, Kenshin fell 1,000 years ago. Ji Tianxing, who now controls the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain, is rumored to be Kenshin's reincarnation, which is why he is so monstrous." The guard captain frowned, and his expression became very strange. "This world has been sealed by the gods. No wonder there is a golden barrier on the surface of the planet that prevents us from entering. But why is this world sealed? Ascending to the god realm is extremely tempting to the people of this world. But to us, this is not attractive at all." Anu revealed a meaningful smile and said in a playful tone, "That's right. To the heaven crushers, the universe is like the ocean, and we are the hunters who fight against the wind and waves. As long as one's strength surpasses the void god realm, one can successfully ascend to the god realm. But to the people of this world, no matter how strong they are, they will never be able to ascend. Think about it, if I could show them a path and give them a chance to ascend to the god realm, they would be grateful to me. Tell me, do you think they would be so grateful that they would be willing to serve me?" Hearing this, the guard captain had a sudden realization, and his eyes shone brightly. "That's right. Sir, you are too brilliant. The powerhouses of this world have not been able to ascend for tens of thousands of years, and they do not know the situation of the god realm. They have an incomparable desire to ascend. If you can make use of this, you will be able to achieve great things." He. Anu laughed coldly and said in a playful tone, "This world is very special, and it is much more interesting than the other worlds that we have conquered. I have decided to completely occupy this world and plunder all of its resources so that I can study its mysteries." He paused for a moment, and his tone became awe-inspiring as he continued, "However, this plan needs to be carried out gradually, and it cannot be rushed." Chapter 2248. 2 hours later. Anu boarded the Wolf Fang battleship with 8 black-armored guards. Whoosh! The giant battleship flew out of the governor's manor and headed north at lightning speed. On the way to Beiming Palace, 4 guards were in charge of steering the ship. Yu sat in a cold, austere room made of black iron. He held 2 ancient books in his hands and quietly flipped through them. The ancient book in his right hand was a brief history of Shunwu continent written in the demon language. As for the ancient book in his left hand, it was an extremely common book written in the demon language. Only the children of the demon race would learn this book when they first learned how to read. Yu had wandered the universe for many years, conquering and plundering many large worlds along the way. He had accumulated a wealth of experience. Conquering and plundering a world was not enough to rely on brute force alone. He still needed to study and research this world's history and foundation. In the 3 months since he had entered the 5-elemental world, aside from conquering, killing, and conquering territories, he had spent all his time studying and researching Shunwu continent. His starting point was to learn the demon language and writing. With his experience, strength, and intelligence, he had already grasped the basics of the demon language and had a rough understanding of Shunwu continent. This was why the Heaven Punishers were so terrifying. Not only did they have an extremely strong life force and combat power, but they also had a learning ability that other races could not hope to achieve. Half a day later, the Wolf Fang battleship flew across a wasteland and arrived at the peak of the Divine Mountain. The battleship stopped above Beiming Palace and floated motionlessly in the air. The captain of the guards walked into the room and respectfully reported to Yu, "Sir, we have arrived." Yu nodded and stored the 2 ancient books in his spatial ring. He stood up and straightened his dark red cloak. His hand was on the hilt of his sword as he stepped out of the battleship. When he landed in the plaza outside Beiming Palace with his 2 guards, Ling Xian and the other demon generals were already waiting for him. Ling Xian hurriedly greeted him and cupped his fists with a smile. "Sir Yu, we had a face-to-face discussion not long ago. What is it that you have to personally come here today?" Yu's face was tense, and his expression and gaze were sinister. He coldly replied, "What? You don't seem to welcome me. Or, are you feeling guilty?" Ling Xian's heart skipped a beat. He naturally understood that Yu was referring to something else. However, his expression did not change. He maintained his smile and pretended to be puzzled. "Lord Yu seems to be in a bad mood. So be it. As a sincere ally, I certainly have to give my ally comfort and care at this time. Lord Yu, please enter the main hall for a chat." Ling Xian pretended that he didn't know what was going on. He put on a smile and didn't seem to be angry at all. Instead, it made Yu feel even more disgusted and even more wary of him. In just a few encounters, Yu understood that Ling Xian's thoughts were vicious, and his actions were treacherous and despicable. He stood out among the demon race experts. No wonder the ancestral devil god gave him the authority. Yu suppressed his anger for the time being and followed Ling Xian into the meeting hall. After both of them were seated, Yu was too lazy to talk nonsense with Ling Xian. He went straight to the point. "I was full of sincerity when I cooperated with you, but you schemed against me and deliberately concealed information about Tianzhu Mountain and Ji Tianxing. Ling Xian, you don't have to put on an act with me. I have already seen through your thoughts. Ji Tianxing seems to be the reincarnation of Kenshin. He is now the strongest person below the martial god realm. Other than a god realm expert, no one can kill him." Since Yu had exposed the truth and talked about the important matter without hiding anything, Ling Xian could no longer be vague. He kept his smile and said solemnly, "Lord Yu, I didn't mean to conceal anything. Moreover, the information that I gave you was absolutely true. Ji Tianxing is indeed only a martial sage. He is also the enemy of my tribe. You sent a few guards to attack Tianzhu Mountain in a battleship. In the end, they failed miserably. I have also heard the news. As for the deaths of the few guards, I am deeply sorry and regretful. However, you can only blame yourself for underestimating your enemy and not attacking personally. It has nothing to do with my tribe. If you had attacked Tianzhu Mountain personally, Ji Tianxing would have been executed by now and we could have immediately started working together to conquer the world." He. Yu sneered and said in a mocking tone, "What? Now that you've failed the mission, You're trying to push all the blame onto this seat. Since that is the case, we have nothing to talk about. I don't want to think about the 72 cities and Tianzhu Mountain for now. I think North Sea Mountain is not bad. Especially this holy mountain and North Sea Palace. I like them very much. Hearing this, Ling Xian's face changed. He frowned and said, Lord and you can't joke about this. You should know that my tribe is sincere. Seeing Anyu's cold smile, Ling Xian gritted his teeth and said, All right, I won't talk nonsense. Lord Anyu, what do you want in return? Only then did Anyu put away his sneer and said in a serious tone, I can kill Ji Tianxing myself, but you will have to pay 3 times the price. I will not give up the 5 regions in the south. The 72 cities and Tianzhu Mountain will still belong to Maine. Also, you must gather 1,000,000 demon warriors for me. I want the best of them. Ling Xian furrowed his brows and shouted without hesitation, Impossible. Lord Anyu, you are asking for too much. You are too overbearing. Hehe, this is just a small lesson for you. Anyu sneered and said, I am sincere about cooperating with you, but you are playing tricks. You can't blame anyone. Ling Xian shook his head again and said firmly, Lord Anyu, you are forcing me. Please forgive me for not agreeing. Anyu did not back down and said, This only shows that you are not sincere at all. The two of them were in a stalemate, neither of them willing to back down. The negotiation was in a stalemate. The atmosphere in the hall was almost frozen. However, at this moment, a voice transmission suddenly sounded in Ling Xian's mind. Master, that bitch has shown herself. It was a low and hoarse voice. It was cold and full of murderous intent. Ling Xian knew that this was his most trusted and most hidden trump card, Kang Ying. His body shook, and then the corners of his mouth curled into a playful smile. He sent a voice transmission to Kang Ying and ordered, Take her down. I want to see what she's up to. After that, he stood up and saluted Anyu. With a solemn expression, he said, Master Anyu, please be patient and wait here for a moment. Chapter 2249. Ling Xian was startled at first, then his lips curled into a cold smile. Then, he stood up and bid farewell, saying that he had something urgent to deal with. Anyu had been watching from the sidelines. He took in his expression and reaction. Seeing him stand up and leave, Anyu was too lazy to ask anything. He sat on the chair and pondered expressionlessly. This despicable bastard, it must be difficult for him to make a decision, so he went to ask the demon ancestor. But because he wanted to save face, he could not tell the truth, so he found this excuse. Anyu thought so. He hated Ling Xian's hypocrisy even more. Behind the conference hall. At the end of the corridor, there was a dark, small, and dirty secret room, which was used to store miscellaneous items. Normally, this secret room would be forgotten by others, and no one would notice it for a few months. Only the deacons in charge of internal affairs knew about the existence of this secret room. Also, as the deacon of internal affairs, Aku had been paying attention to the news of the foreign races. Half a month ago, she had suffered 50 soul lashes, she was almost dead, her mind was extremely weak, and she had been recuperating in her room. Today, her injuries had recovered a little, and her mental state was much better. But she received news that the leader of the foreign races, Anyu, had come to Beiming Palace with the black battleship. She immediately realized that Anyu had come to see the great demon sage personally. There must be something important to discuss. So, she ignored her injuries and sneaked into this small and dark secret room. She hid in the corner of the secret room, and with a little trick, she could eavesdrop on the conversation in the conference hall. She had also heard the argument between Ling Xian and Anyu. Neither of them was willing to back down. The pillar of Heaven's mountain had successfully blocked the attack of the battleship, and Ji Tianxing had killed a few foreign race guards. She was relieved and secretly happy. Originally, she held her breath and listened attentively, wanting to know the result. Would Anyu and Ling Xian continue to work together? If the negotiation did not break down, what plan would they have next? But, something that Aku did not expect happened. Just as she was listening attentively, a black shadow silently appeared in the darkness behind her. Swoosh! This blurry human figure was like a shadow of a person. There was no flesh and blood body, nor was there any magic power fluctuation or soul aura. He came without a trace and left without a trace. The black shadow did not make a sound and directly struck out a pair of pitch-black dragon claws towards Aku. Aku sensed danger and subconsciously turned around. He waved his palms and sent out 2 bloody palm shadows. Bang bang! With a muffled sound, the 2 bloody palm shadows collapsed on the spot, smashed into pieces by the pair of pitch-black dragon claws. In the next instant, the pitch-black dragon claw enveloped Aku. The secret chamber was so small that Aku couldn't dodge at all. Next door was the great meeting hall, so it was best not to cause too much of a commotion. Otherwise, his identity would be exposed. Her heart was burning with anxiety as she desperately rushed to the side, trying to avoid the dragon's claws. However, her strength was simply too weak compared to that black shadow. There was no suspense in the outcome. She was immediately captured by the pitch-black dragon claw and held firmly in its palm. 5 sharp and cold claws locked her tightly, making it difficult for her to struggle or resist. Cold black gas surged out of the black claws and covered her body, making her unable to use her strength. Aku's expression changed drastically. Her dark red eyes flashed with anger and worry. However, she tried to maintain her composure and shouted at the black shadow, "Bastard! I am the Internal Affairs Deacon, what are you doing? Let me go." The black shadow's eyes were like 2 dark red flames, staring straight at her. He said with a hoarse voice, "Not only do I know that you are the Internal Affairs Deacon, I also know that your name is Aku. Furthermore, your whereabouts in the past few months have been strange. You have been secretly eavesdropping on the great demon saint's plans. You have bad intentions." Aku immediately frowned as a bad premonition arose in her heart. She thought to herself, "Damn it. This guy is secretly spying on me. Could it be that the great demon saint is already suspicious of me? Damn it. I have been very careful these past 2 years and have never exposed myself. It is only because of the appearance of the foreign race experts that I became anxious." At this time, the black shadow continued, "Oh right, my name is Kang Ying. I am Master's shadow. You don't have to refute or explain yourself. If you have anything to say, just say it to Master." Kang Ying's words confirmed Aku's guess. Her heart sank to the bottom, and her body turned cold. After a while, the stone door of the secret room opened. A tall and burly black shadow covered in dragon scales stepped into the secret room. The person who came was the great demon saint, Ling Xian. His face was filled with a cold smile, and his body was filled with cold killing intent. He stood in the middle of the secret room and looked at Aku with sharp eyes. He asked in a deep voice, "Aku, tell me, why are you doing this?" How could Aku admit it? She immediately suppressed the worry in her heart and revealed an expression as if she had seen her savior. She said anxiously, "Great demon saint, you are finally here. Quickly tell Kang Ying that this is a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Ling Xian grinned coldly and said in a playful tone, "Previously, you were too concerned about the foreign race and wanted to influence my decision. Now that a new has come to visit again, you are hiding here and secretly eavesdropping on the negotiations between me and a new. Tell me, who are you? Who do you work for? You are a smart person, and you should know my methods. If you know what is good for you, be honest. Otherwise, here." Aku hurriedly shook her head and explained anxiously, "Great demon saint, Aku is innocent. You also know that Aku used to be a blood-robed guard and trained in the Bloodsea Abyss for 3 months. I will only be loyal to the demon race and the ancestor demon god. The reason why I am so concerned about the foreign race is also for the sake of the demon race. The foreign race experts have evil intentions and are full of ambition. They are definitely not good people. Our race cooperating with them is like asking a tiger for its skin. Not only will we be attacked by them, but we will also disappoint countless people." Speaking up to here, Aku revealed a sincere expression and said in a self-mocking tone, "Great demon saint, you also know Aku's nature. I am good at guessing the intentions of my superiors and helping my master solve problems. Although Aku is the Internal Affairs Deacon and cannot interfere with government affairs, I wholeheartedly protect the demon race and want to contribute to the demon race. Unfortunately, Aku is too concerned about this important matter and has made you doubt Aku's intentions. If Aku had known earlier, Aku would have been a useless internal affairs deacon waiting for death to earn your trust. Hearing her words, Ling Xian frowned and fell silent for a moment. He stared at Aku with a burning gaze and secretly used his divine sense to check the fluctuations of her spirit. For a moment, he almost believed Aku's words. However, he was cunning and suspicious by nature. After a moment of silence, he sneered and said, "Aku, you really have a sharp tongue, unlike the other blood-robed guards. No matter what you say, this seat will not believe you. Kang Ying, take her to the torture department and torture her." Chapter 2250. Aku was filled with anxiety and wanted to defend himself. But Ling Xian did not want to listen to her and waved his hand to give the order. Kang Ying immediately took Aku out of the secret room and brought her to the torture department. At the same time, two groups of fierce-looking guards hurried to Aku's residence. The three rooms that were neither too big nor too small were soon turned upside down. In less than 15 minutes, the guards brought a large pile of boxes, books, and jade slips to Ling Xian. Ling Xian released his divine sense and scanned the messy pile of items. However, after 100 breaths, he withdrew his divine sense in disappointment. There was nothing unusual about these items. Even if the jade slips were strange, there was no conclusive evidence. Ling Xian could not help but frown and mumble to himself, "Is there really nothing wrong with her? Did I really misunderstand her?" Not long after, a guard rushed over from afar and quickly reporting to Lord Devil Saint, "There's news from the torture department." Ling Xian raised his eyebrows and asked, "What news?" The guard replied respectfully, "Lord Kang Ying sent Aku to the torture department. After 3 types of torture, she was tortured so badly that she fainted. However, Lord Kang Ying forcefully broke Aku's space ring and found 2 communication jade slips. Lord Kang Ying said that there's something strange about the 2 communication jade slips. You'll understand once you take a look." Hearing this, Ling Xian's eyes lit up and his lips curled into a cold smile. "Ha ha ha. I guessed right. There's something wrong with that bitch." After saying this, he brought the guards and rushed to the torture department. The infamous torture department was located behind Beiming Palace, at the edge of the cliff of the sacred mountain. This was a huge black palace that looked like a skull. It sat on the edge of the cliff. The palace was built with huge black stones, and there were many blood-red flags on top of it, engraved with array patterns. The huge black door was the mouth of the skull. Those who were sent to the torture department were like being sent to the bloody mouth of a demon. The torture department was dark and gloomy. It was filled with the smell of blood and decay. Ling Xian passed through 2 dark corridors and arrived at a spacious prison cell. It was a cell with a radius of 100 meters. It was built with black boulders, and the walls were engraved with demonic carvings. There were a few blood-red gemstone lamps in the corners. As far as the eye could see, there were several rows of ferocious-looking torture instruments placed in the cell. On the innermost ground, there was a blood pool with blood-red flames boiling, emitting a nauseating smell of blood. On the eastern wall, there was a 10-meter-high altar. The base of the altar was made of skulls. There was a copper pillar as thick as a bucket on the altar, its surface covered with sharp spikes and grooves. A 7-foot-tall, slightly skinny woman was tied to a copper pillar by several dark red chains. His neck, hands, legs, and waist were all locked by black shackles. The black shackles emitted demonic chi and released a gloomy and eerie aura, immobilizing the woman. This woman was Aku. She was covered in blood and her head was lowered, unconscious. Her face was covered by her messy, blood-stained hair. Many of the spikes on the copper pillar had pierced deeply into her body. There were also 2 spikes that had pierced through her thin shoulders, and a part of them was sticking out. Dark red blood constantly gushed out, dripping down the spikes and grooves on the copper pillar onto the altar. Besides this, her black robe was in tatters, torn to shreds by the whips. Her limbs and shoulders were covered with dozens of wounds so deep that bone could be seen. Blood constantly seeped out, drenching her clothes. There was no doubt that in the last 15 minutes, she had been cruelly and viciously tortured. These were only visible physical injuries. What had truly caused her to faint were the injuries to her soul. Half a month ago, she had been subjected to 50 soul lashes in the torture department. Just now, The executioner had lashed her another 50 times, severely injuring her soul and causing her to lose consciousness. In order to not expose her identity, she had not used the power of the heavenly star chain to protect her soul and had endured it. If not for this, she would not have been tortured to such a state. A black shadow stood below the altar, as well as a fiendish demon man as muscular as a bear. This person held a dark purple whip in his hand. His face was savage and terrifying, and he gave off a malicious aura. He was the deacon of the torture department, an executioner. Seeing Ling Xian enter the cell, the executioner and the black shadow simultaneously bowed and said respectfully, "Greetings, Lord Devil Saint." Ling Xian nodded slightly, indicating that the two could dispense with the formalities. He glanced at Ah Ku on the altar, then turned to the black shadow and asked, "Kang Ying, what clues have you found?" Kang Ying hurriedly extended a pair of black claws, holding out 2 dark purple communication jade slips and presenting them to Ling Xian. "Lord Devil Saint, these 2 communication jade slips were found in Ah Ku's spatial ring. You will immediately understand after reading the information inside." Ling Xian hurriedly took the jade slips and used his spiritual sense to read the information inside. Instantly, Ah Ku's clear voice sounded in his mind. "Brother Tianxing, the situation in North Underworld Mountain has been relatively peaceful in the past few months. The demons have not made any unusual movements. North Underworld Palace and Holy City have been rebuilt long ago. The demons have been recuperating and will probably not start another war for the next 10 years. The ancestor demon god is still recuperating and cultivating in the Blood Sea Abyss. Great Devil Saint Ling Xian and Third Devil Saint Sheng Tuo have recovered from their injuries and are currently presiding over the situation." Without a doubt, this was the message that Ji Ku had sent to Ji Tianxing not long ago. Hearing Ji Ku's voice, Ling Xian was startled. Before he became a demon, he was from the vast divine kingdom, so he could understand the human language. After hearing the entire message in the jade slip, he immediately revealed a sinister smile. "Ha ha ha, the human language, and the tone is so gentle. It's like a completely different person from the usual Ah Ku. Brother Tianxing? How affectionate. The enemy that my clan hates the most is actually Ah Ku's brother. This is really unexpected." Speaking of this, Ling Xian's face became malevolent, and his eyes flickered with dense anger. He could not help but curse, "Ji Tianxing, oh Ji Tianxing, you are really cunning and treacherous. No wonder the elites of my clan repeatedly tried to assassinate you, but they were all resolved by you and allowed you to live until today. It turns out that you actually let your sister infiltrate North Underworld Mountain as a spy, right under my nose." Ling Xian picked up the second jade slip and used his spiritual sense to read the information inside. Ji Ku's voice sounded in his mind again. "Brother Tianxing, I have good news to tell you. Recently, a mysterious force has entered North Underworld Mountain and is wreaking havoc in the south." After listening patiently, Ling Xian sneered again. Chapter 2251. Ling Xian put away the 2 communication jade slips. His expression was ferocious and terrifying as he looked at Ji Ku with a gloomy gaze. "Wake her up. I have something to ask her." The executioner hurriedly nodded and responded, then raised the dark purple long whip and lashed it on Ji Ku's body. Immediately, a chopstick-sized wound appeared on her body, and dark red blood splattered out. Unfortunately, she was unconscious and did not react even after being whipped. She did not even let out a scream. Her divine soul was already severely injured. After being whipped by the soul-punishing whip, her injuries worsened. When the executioner saw that she had not woken up, he could not help but frown. He waved his hand and shot a dazzling purple demonic light into Ji Ku's body. That demonic light contained a gust of divine soul energy. After entering Ji Ku's body, it was about to enter her divine soul. Although her divine soul was severely injured, it still remained pure. Under the protection of the heavenly star chain, it was not contaminated by the demonic qi. Now that she was unconscious, the heavenly star chain was automatically activated when the demonic light was about to erode her divine soul. Swoosh! The heavenly star chain hidden in her mind emitted sacred starlight and wrapped around her divine soul, protecting it firmly. The purple demonic light was instantly shattered by the starlight and expelled from her body. Seeing this, the executioner's expression changed. He was full of doubts. Ling Xian had been staring at Ji Ku. When he sensed the sacred energy fluctuation in her body, he immediately frowned. There is such a mighty energy fluctuation in this B*TCH's body. Does she have some powerful Dharma treasure? Ling Xian thought to himself. Ji Ku was Ji Tianqing's sister. Since she dared to infiltrate the Beiming Palace as a spy, she must have a trump card that could save her life. He quickly released his divine sense and carefully observed Ji Ku's situation. He immediately saw that there was a ball of silver light in Ji Ku's mind. It was as dazzling as a star. That ball of white light tightly wrapped around Ji Ku's mind and divine soul. It was healing the injuries to her divine soul. Ling Xian's spiritual consciousness had just touched the ball of starlight, but before he could see clearly what was going on, his spiritual consciousness bounced back. The boundless and shocking rebounding force actually shook him to the point that his expression changed drastically. He took 5 steps back with a thump 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 sound, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Ling Xian's divine sense also felt a burst of dizziness, only feeling that the sky and earth were spinning, almost falling to the ground. A moment later, his consciousness recovered, and his stumbling footsteps stabilized. He looked at Ji Ku with a face full of shock and disbelief as he shouted, "That damned bitch." There was actually such a powerful magic treasure hidden in his body. It must be a saint artifact, the most powerful saint artifact, to have such power. Ling Xian was both shocked and angry. His eyes flashed with a bright light as he quickly pondered over the problem. Kang Ying suggested, "Master, since you're sure that our Ku is a spy sent by Ji Tianqing, let's kill her. The saint artifacts and magical treasures she possesses will also belong to you." Ling Xian quickly waved his hand and sneered sinisterly, "Kill her? Ha 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 ha. She's a priceless treasure now, how can I bear to kill her?" Kang Ying was startled, not understanding what he meant. He subconsciously asked, "Master, what do you mean?" Ling Xian's face was full of pride as he sneered, "Killing her like this is too easy for this bitch. From today onwards, continue to torture her, and let her taste all the torture and pain in the world. However, we can't let her die yet, we have to keep her alive. She's Ji Tianqing's sister. I'm still waiting for Ji Tianqing to rescue her and die with her, ha 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 ha." Ling Xian laughed complacently and turned to leave the prison cell. Kang Ying and the executioner looked at each other, suddenly understanding Ling Xian's plan. It turned out that he wanted to use a coup as bait to lure Ji Tianqing to his death. After leaving the torture department, Ling Xian was in a good mood. When he returned to the conference hall of Beiming Palace, he couldn't help but smile. An Yu had been waiting for half an hour, and his patience was running out. He closed his eyes and rested with a gloomy face. When he heard Ling Xian's footsteps, he opened his eyes and looked at him coldly. Seeing Ling Xian's smug smile, An Yu was startled. He thought to himself, what happened? Why is this guy so happy? Could it be that he asked the devil race's first ancestor for permission? At this time, Ling Xian walked to his side and sat down. He said in a relaxed tone, "Master An Yu, I'm really sorry for making you wait for so long. I was dealing with a small matter just now." An Yu looked at him expressionlessly and said, "Cut the crap. Do you agree to my conditions or not?" Ling Xian smiled and waved his hand, "Master An Yu, don't be impatient. Listen to the small matter I just dealt with first." Me. An Yu snorted coldly. His eyes were burning with dark red flames. He was about to explode in anger. Ling Xian acted as if he didn't see it. He said slowly, "I have a blood-robed guard under my command. Her name is Ku. She came to Beiming Mountain 3 years ago. She has always been loyal to me. She is very good at figuring out my intentions. She is also very clever. Half a year ago, I promoted her to Beiming Palace and made her an internal affairs deacon." The anger in An Yu's eyes grew. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore and slammed his hand on the table. "Bastard! I don't have time to listen to your nonsense." Ling Xian saw that An Yu was angry. He quickly waved his hand and said, "Master An Yu, please calm down. I'm just explaining the situation to you. Since you don't want to listen, I'll get straight to the point. When I was discussing important matters with you, Our coup hid in a secret room just a wall away and eavesdropped on our conversation. I suspected there was something wrong with our coup, so I sent my subordinates to spy on her. After I caught her, I found 2 communication jade slips on her body. That's how I found out her true identity. Can you guess who she really is? Ling Xian wanted to keep Anu guessing. But when he saw Anu's angry face and eyes, he didn't dare to say more. He quickly announced the answer. She is Ji Tianxing's sister. She is a spy that Ji Tianxing planted by my side. Hearing this, Anu was stunned for a moment before his anger gradually dissipated. He frowned. Hundreds of thoughts flashed through his mind. He immediately came up with a plan. Oh, Ji Tianxing is so cunning. He planted a spy by your side. If that's the case, why do we have to go to Tianzhu Mountain to find him? We can use a coup as bait to lure Ji Tianxing into our trap. Ling Xian laughed. Ha ha ha. Master Anu is really smart. You have the same idea as me. That's right. This is the turning point of the situation, and it is also our best chance. We just need to spread the news and set up a trap here. Then, we can wait for Ji Tianxing to come and die. Anu frowned and thought for a while. He shook his head and said, since Ji Tianxing is so cunning, he will know that this is a trap when he finds out that a coup is captured. I'm afraid he won't come. Chapter 2252. Pillar of Heaven's Mountain. It was early in the morning when the sun was rising. Many disciples in white robes were practicing their swordsmanship on the training grounds. There were also many elite disciples sitting on the rooftops and eaves of the palace, meditating and absorbing the morning light and spiritual energy. But at this moment, a guard in armor flew down from the sky and landed on the training grounds as fast as lightning. He looked anxious as he ran across the training grounds and went straight to Pillar of Heaven's palace. Seeing this scene, many of the disciples who were cultivating frowned in confusion and began to discuss in secret. Wasn't that person our sect's scout? Yes. That scout rushed back and went straight to Pillar of Heaven's palace. Could it be that he has important news to report? What's going on? Did something big happen again? The situation has become more and more tense in the past 6 months. I'm afraid something big has happened again. Don't make wild guesses. If something really happened, the Great Immortal and the Elders will announce it soon. Many disciples discussed for a while and then went back to practicing. At the same time, in Pillar of Heaven's palace, Huanglong Daoist study. He was reading books and drinking tea leisurely, preparing to deal with official business. Outside the study, there was a sudden sound of hurried footsteps. A strong figure in armor rushed to the door of the study and bowed. Reporting to the Great Immortal, I have just received urgent news. I need to report it immediately. Huanglong Daoist frowned and turned to look at the scout at the door. He asked in a deep voice, "What's so urgent?" The scout did not dare to say much. He cupped his hands and reporting to the Great Immortal. The spy in North Underworld Mountain said that young Master Ji's sister, Miss Arku, has been exposed by the Great Demon Sage. Now, the Great Demon Sage has imprisoned Miss Arku in North Underworld Palace and is torturing her every day. Also, North Underworld Palace has released news that Miss Arku will be publicly executed in the square 10 days later as a warning to others. Hearing this news, Huanglong Daoist spat out the tea that he had not swallowed. What? Young Master Ji's sister? Arku? Huanglong Daoist didn't have time to wipe the tea off his white beard. He stared at the messenger scout with his eyes wide open. His expression was very interesting. Where did this news come from? How could young Master Ji have a younger sister? Who is that so-called Miss Arku? The messenger was also bewildered by the Huanglong Daoist's question. After a moment of silence, the scout scratched his head and said with a firm tone, "Great Immortal, I don't know if the news is true or false. However, this news came from Beiming Palace. Furthermore, our spies have repeatedly instructed us to send back the exact same information." Huanglong Daoist frowned and thought for a moment. He couldn't help but mutter, how could there be such a thing? This old man has never heard that young Master Ji has a younger sister. Could this be a scheme of the demon race? But isn't this scheme too clumsy? After thinking for a while, Huanglong Daoist waved his hand and ordered, You can leave now. This news shouldn't be spread. The scout didn't dare to ask any more questions. He quickly cupped his hands and bowed before leaving. Huanglong Daoist felt that this news was inexplicable. He didn't want to pay attention to it. He picked up the book on the table and flipped through it. However, after flipping through a few pages, he felt uneasy. He couldn't help but get up and leave the study room. He rushed to Ji Tianxing's residence. Whether the news is true or false, I have to report it to Master first. Perhaps this is another scheme of the demon race. With this thought, Huanglong Daoist came to the door of the secret room where Ji Tianxing was in seclusion. He waved his hand and shot out a few streaks of dazzling light into the stone door of the secret room. He began to knock on the door to wake Ji Tianxing up. At this time, Ji Tianxing was in the Divine Star Furnace underground, casting a spell to melt the illusory spirit star nucleus. Sensing that someone was knocking on the door of the secret room, he quickly ended the spell and left the Divine Star Furnace. After about 20 breaths, the stone door of the secret room creaked open. Ji Tianxing, dressed in a white robe, walked out of the secret room. When he saw that the person who knocked on the door was Huanglong Daoist, he asked calmly, "Huanglong, what happened? Why did you knock on the door to wake me up?" "This." Huanglong Daoist bowed. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "Master, just now a messenger came to report the news. The spy in the North Underworld Mountain sent back the news that your sister Miss Arku's identity has been exposed by the Great Demon Sage. Now, the Great Demon Sage has imprisoned Miss Arku in the North Underworld Palace. He is torturing her every day. Moreover, the North Underworld Palace has publicly announced that Miss Arku will be executed in public in 10 days. Before Huanglong Daoist could finish his words, Ji Tianxing's face changed dramatically. His calm eyes instantly became as cold as ice. What? When did this news come? Ji Tianxing's face was full of anxiety. His eyebrows were tightly knitted. He grabbed Huanglong Daoist's shoulders with both hands and asked anxiously. Huanglong Daoist was also dumbfounded. He looked at Ji Tianxing in shock and could not help but ask, Master? Could it be, this news is true? He originally thought that when his master heard this absurd news, he would most likely sneer or laugh disdainfully. But he completely did not expect that his master would have such a reaction. "Master, don't tell me you really have a sister?" Huanglong Daoist still could not believe it and asked again. Ji Tianxing gradually calmed down. He suppressed the worry and anger in his heart and asked in a low voice, "Huanglong, when did this happen?" Huanglong Daoist was finally sure that his master really had a sister. It was that Miss Arku. He secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, he was cautious and reported this news to his master. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. At this time, Ji Tianxing saw that he was in a daze. He grabbed his shoulders and shook a few times and asked again. Huanglong Daoist seemed to wake up from a dream and quickly answered, "Master, according to the information reported by the spies, this news came from Beiming Palace yesterday. This should have happened yesterday." Ji Tianxing frowned and murmured with a gloomy face, Cuckoo, I've been worried for a long time. With the treachery and cunning of the demon clan, they would see through your identity sooner or later. I didn't expect that this day would still come. I don't know what kind of vicious torture you will be subjected to when you are imprisoned in Beiming Palace. After saying this, he said to Huanglong Daoist with a dignified face, "Huanglong, this news is temporarily confidential. Do not spread it to the public. I will leave for a few days. During this time, you must guard Tianzhu Mountain. Do not leave. Activate all the mountain protection arrays to prevent the demon clan from luring the tiger away from the mountain and taking the opportunity to attack Tianzhu Mountain." After giving the order, he got up and was about to leave. If this happened to someone else, he would not be so worried and anxious. But the person who was imprisoned and tortured was Ji Ku. She was the most sincere and selfless person to him. She was so foolish that it made his heart ache. Chapter 2253. Seeing Ji Tianxing's reaction, Huanglong Daoist knew that he wanted to go to Beiming Palace to save Cuckoo. He was immediately filled with anxiety and stepped forward to stop Ji Tianxing. "Shizuan, you must not be impulsive. This is obviously a scheme of the demons. Beiming Palace must have deliberately released the news to lure you to rescue Miss Ku. Once you step into Beiming Palace, what awaits you will definitely be an inescapable net and a trap. Ji Tianxing stared at Huanglong Daoist with a dignified gaze and said in a low voice, Huanglong, Master is not being impulsive, but I must go. Do you know how important Cuckoo is to Master? In order to help Master fight against the demons, she did not hesitate to be demonized and hid in Beiming Mountain as a spy. How much danger and suffering did she endure? For Master, she can disregard everything, even her own life. Now that she is in trouble and trapped, how can Master just stand by and watch? Only then did Huanglong come to a realization. He understood the reason for the matter and was immediately at a loss for words. Get out of the way, Ji Tianxing said in a dignified tone. Even if Beiming Palace is ambushed from all sides, Master must go. Don't worry, Master will not act rashly. I have made preparations and plans. Huanglong Daoist quickly shook his head and continued to persuade, Shizuan, Disciple understands that you are a righteous person and do not want to let Miss Ku down, so Disciple will not stop you. But if you go now, you will most likely die. How can Disciple just sit by and watch? If Master insists on going, Disciple will hand over the power to the elders and personally accompany Master to Beiming Palace. Even if Disciple dies in Beiming Palace, Disciple will accompany Master. Huanglong Daoist's tone was firm and persistent, with a bit of solemnity in the face of death. After he finished speaking, he turned to leave. Stop! Ji Tianxing shouted coldly and reached out to stop him. He said in a dignified tone, You are already so old, how can you be so reckless? Aren't you going to die? Huanglong Daoist turned his head to look at him and said helplessly, Shizuan, your seniority is higher than Huanglong's, and you are more wise and knowledgeable. Since you know that this is courting death, why are you so persistent? You. Ji Tianxing was suddenly choked by him and was speechless. Huanglong Daoist hurriedly bowed and said in a sincere tone, Master, this disciple doesn't mean to contradict you, but this disciple absolutely won't agree to this matter. This disciple will inform the elders of this matter and let everyone discuss it together. Even if you insist on going, please don't be in a hurry. At least make some preparations. With that, he turned around and slipped away, ignoring Ji Tianxing's warning. Sigh. Ji Tianxing sighed and returned to the secret room to prepare. He first went through the spatial rings and sorted out some artifacts, talismans, and jade slips that might be useful. Not long after, Huanglong Daoist led the 6 elders to the door of the secret chamber. Everyone knew the truth and unanimously objected to Ji Tianxing going to Beiming Palace. Even if Ji Tianxing didn't open the door, everyone blocked the door and tried their best to persuade him. Within Luoshui Kingdom. Luoshui Mountain. It was noon and the disciples were supposed to be cultivating in their rooms. However, a joyous event had happened yesterday. Until today, Luoshui Mountain was still lively and full of joy. This was because Luoshui Mountain's senior sister, Yun Yarrow, had finally completed her cultivation and successfully came out of seclusion. No one knew what kind of fortuitous encounter she had, but her strength soared and she actually broke through to the martial sage realm. She became the 2nd martial sage in Luoshui Mountain in 300 years. At the same time, she was also the 2nd most talented genius after Ji Tianxing. Such a shocking news shocked all the disciples, guards, and maids. Even the several thousand servants of the Luotian Mountain knew about this matter. Even now, they were still discussing it. Not only these people, but even the attendants and elders couldn't understand what had happened to Yun Yarrow. She had actually broken through to the martial sage realm from the tribulation stage in just a few years. On the Shunwu continent, even the most famous geniuses would need at least 100 years to accomplish such a feat. These 2 days, the Cloud Water Palace was packed with people. They were all disciples, guards, and maids of Luoshui Mountain. When everyone heard the news, they all wanted to enter the Cloud Water Palace to see the new martial sage's face and gain some good fortune. Although Yun Yarrow had just broken through to the martial sage realm and was still meditating in the secret chamber to consolidate her martial foundation, she couldn't come out to meet the guests. However, Everyone's enthusiasm didn't decrease as they surrounded the Cloud Water Palace and discussed this matter in groups of 3 to 5. You didn't see it at that time. When Senior Sister broke through to the martial sage realm, the sky was filled with rosy clouds and auspicious auras. It was like a god descending to the mortal world. Ha! I witnessed that heavenly anomaly with my own eyes. Moreover, the sky was filled with rosy clouds and neon lights that formed the phantom of a phoenix that spread its wings and sang. I heard from the elders that according to the strange phenomenon when Senior Sister broke through to the martial sage realm, she is a noble and unparalleled heavenly lady. She will definitely become a god in the future. Senior Sister was originally a heavenly lady. In the future, she will inherit the mantle of the Divine Master and control the entire kingdom of God. Just as everyone was discussing animatedly, a white-haired figure quickly strode through the gates of Cloudwater Palace. It was a stooped old granny with a kind face and a dignified aura. Everyone was curious and doubtful as they started to discuss again. Hey, isn't that Granny Long? Granny just visited Senior Sister. Why is she here again? That's strange. Granny looks a little serious. She doesn't seem to be in a good mood. Granny Long is in such a hurry to enter the Cloudwater Palace. Did something happen? Bah. Don't say such inauspicious things. Senior Sister just broke through to the martial sage realm. This is a joyous occasion for the entire country. Many disciples, guards, and maids were still discussing outside the palace. Inside the Cloudwater Palace, Black Eagle led the serious-looking Granny Long quickly into Yoon Yaro's room. She guarded the door while Granny Long walked to the corner and cast a spell to open the door to the secret room. Creak, creak, creak. After a series of muffled sounds, the door to the secret room opened. Yoon Yaro, dressed in a snow-white dress, was sitting cross-legged on a futon in the middle of the secret room. Her eyes were closed as she adjusted her breathing. Her expression was calm, and her aura was peaceful. However, there was an extraordinary and powerful aura surrounding her. When she heard the stone door of the secret room open, she opened her clear eyes. When she saw Granny Long walk in with a strange expression, she raised her eyebrows slightly and asked, "Granny, why have you come back? Is there anything else?" Granny Long did not beat around the bush. She nodded with a serious expression and said in a serious tone, "Yoon Yaro, Tianqing is in trouble." "What?" Yoon Yaro's expression changed instantly. She asked worriedly, "Granny, what happened?" Granny Long said in a serious tone, "The spy I arranged in the North Underworld Mountain just sent back an urgent message." Chapter 2254. The sudden news stunned Yoon Yaro for a moment. After Grandma Long finished speaking, she came back to her senses and quickly stood up. "Tianqing's sister, Miss Arku? It's Ji Ku. When did she come here? How did she sneak into Beiming Mountain and become a spy for the demon race?" Yoon Yaro naturally knew about Ji Ku, and she was even more aware of Ji Ku's feelings for Ji Tianqing. Therefore, her state of mind was immediately in a mess, and her body and mind were filled with worry and anxiety. Her eyes, which were as clear as water, were covered with deep worry. She frowned and thought, and her lips were tightly pursed, but she didn't speak for a long time. Seeing her so worried, Grandma Long advised, "Yoon Yao, I know you are very worried, but I must remind you that you must dissuade Tianqing." The news that the spies heard was deliberately released by Beiming Palace. The demon race's intention is clear. They want to use Miss Arku as bait to lure Tianqing to Beiming Palace to rescue her. The person they really want to deal with is Tianqing. Yoon Yaro nodded and said in a low voice, "Yes. This is no longer a conspiracy of the demon race, but an open one. They clearly want to force Tianqing to save Ji Ku, or else they will execute Ji Ku in public." Grandma Long frowned and said worriedly, "You know Tianqing better than I do, so of course you know what he will choose. Even if he knows that this is a trap, he will still go to Beiming Mountain. I know that my words carry little weight, and it will be difficult for me to dissuade Tianqing. Therefore, I came to inform you as soon as I heard the news. I think you are the only one who can persuade him." Yoon Yaro nodded silently and said in a calm voice, "We all know Tianqing's nature very well. He has always been loyal and righteous, and he will never sit by and watch Ji Ku be killed. However, Even if I were to send a message to him now and dissuade him from saving them, it would be useless. What's more, Tianxing and I have both let Jiku down. I'm not a jealous woman, so how can I dissuade him at this time? Granny Long was an experienced person. She immediately sensed that something was wrong. She couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. Yun Yao, could it be that Aku isn't Tianxing's sister? Yun Yao nodded, then shook her head and explained, yes, and no. Aku and Tianxing were childhood sweethearts. They grew up together and had a very deep relationship. She loved Tianxing wholeheartedly and was willing to give up everything for him, even if it meant her life. But Tianxing married me and betrayed Aku's true feelings. This matter has always been hidden in my heart, and it also makes me feel deeply guilty. Granny Long came to a realization and nodded, so that's how it is. Tianxing married you, but he didn't want to let you down. So, Tianxing didn't accept Aku and treated her as a sister. Aku didn't complain and gave her all. Even if she was in the demon's nest, she would do her best to help Tianxing. Such a deep friendship shouldn't be let down. Granny Long sighed with complicated feelings. Her expression was also very helpless. Yun Yao nodded slightly and said firmly, since Granny also thinks so, then I can't be the bad person. Otherwise, Tianxing will regret it for the rest of his life. I'll send a message to Tianxing now. I won't dissuade him. Instead, I'll support him. Granny, I've decided to go to Tianzhu Mountain immediately. I want to fight side by side with Tianxing and go to Beiming Palace to rescue Jiku. What? Granny Long's expression changed drastically. She was obviously shocked. Yun Yao, are you crazy? Aku loves Tianxing deeply. It's reasonable to say that she's your love rival. You know that Tianxing doesn't care about the danger and wants to rescue your love rival. You're already very magnanimous to allow him to do so. But you, not only do you support Tianxing, but you also want to die with him? Beiming Palace is the demon's nest. They'll definitely set up ambushes and traps. Do you still need me to tell you how dangerous that place is? Yun Yao shook her head. She looked at Granny Long and said firmly, Granny, I'm not crazy. I'm very clear-headed. I know that Aku loves Tianxing deeply. She loves him more than anyone else in the world, even more than me. Back then, Aku had already died for Tianxing once. We can't let her sacrifice herself for Tianxing a second time. If Tianxing had awakened his memories earlier, he wouldn't have let Aku down. The person he would have married would have been Aku. But before he awakened his memories, I met and fell in love with him. We even got married and had a child together. We've all let Aku down. This time, I'll go with Tianxing to save her. Regardless of whether we succeed or not, at least we'll be at ease. Otherwise, I'll blame myself for the rest of my life and despise myself forever. Yun Yao's tone was sincere and sincere. Every word came from the bottom of her heart. Granny Long was very emotional when she heard that. She sighed helplessly and said, Sigh. Yun Yao, how can there be a woman like you in this world? Granny knows that you've always been gentle and kind, aloof from worldly affairs, virtuous and modest. But how can you be so stupid? At this point, she glanced at Yun Yao's slightly bulging belly and immediately had an idea. Yun Yao, even if you're broad-minded and want to fight side by side with Tianxing to rescue Jiku, you still haven't thought about what you've done. But have you thought about the children in your belly? They haven't been born yet. If anything happens to you and Tianxing, the two children will follow. At that time, will you still feel no regrets? You made the decision on your own. Have you considered your children? Yun Yao's body trembled, and her expression froze for a moment. She slowly lowered her head and looked at her belly. She suddenly hesitated. Indeed, she could make the decision for herself. Even if she knew that she would die, she would still want to be with Ji Tianxing. However, the two children in her belly were the most precious lives. As a mother, how could she decide the life and death of her children? Just as she was hesitating, the two children in her womb suddenly moved. Immediately after, Chen Chen and Yaya's voices rang in her mind. Mother, we support your decision. Mother, no matter whether we live or die, our family will always be together. Quickly go and meet up with father. Even though the two children's voices were very young and tender, Chunchan's words were short and her tone was firm. Yaya's thoughts were more meticulous, and her emotions were richer. At that moment, Yun Yaro only felt a warm current flowing through her heart. She was filled with happiness and gratitude. Her eyes were covered with a layer of mist. She couldn't help but smile and nod. Good children, my good children. Mother and father are proud of you. Seeing this, Granny Long was very anxious, but she could no longer persuade her. After Yun Yaro bowed to her, she took out a transmission jade slip and sent a message to Ji Tianxing. At the same time, she quickly packed her luggage, summoned the glazed fire dragon, and rode it out of Cloudwater Palace. Chapter 2255. Tianzhu Mountain. Huanglong Daoist and several elders were still blocking the door of Ji Tianxing's secret chamber. 4 hours had passed, but they still hadn't left. They knelt outside the secret chamber and took turns to persuade Ji Tianxing, hoping that he would give up the idea of going to Beiming Mountain. Ji Tianxing tried to chase Huanglong and the other elders away several times, but they refused to leave no matter what. Huanglong Daoist's attitude was also very firm. If Ji Tianxing insisted on going to Beiming Mountain, he had to go with him. The two sides were in a stalemate and couldn't resolve it for the time being. However, at this moment, a stream of light suddenly flew from the sky. Swoosh! The dense stream of light flew into the secret chamber and landed in front of Ji Tianxing. After the light faded away, a communication jade slip appeared. Ji Tianxing was meditating and thinking about the rescue plan. He was startled when he suddenly saw the stream of light flying over. He reached out to pick up the communication jade slip and sent his divine sense into it. Immediately, Yun Yaro's voice sounded in his mind. My husband, I suddenly heard the news today that our Ku's identity was exposed. I'm also very worried. My husband, please calm down and wait for a day. I will immediately come to Tianzhu Mountain to meet you and talk in detail face to face. From Yun Yao's tone, it was clear that she was worried and anxious. She had always been calm and wise. Only when she encountered an extremely important matter would she react like this. Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and slowly put away the communication jade slip. He was full of doubts. What's going on? Isn't Yaro Yaro in seclusion in Luotian Mountain? How did she know about this? How did the news spread to Luotian Mountain? I just gave her the wind-fire divine bead not long ago. Logically speaking, she should be in seclusion to refine the divine bead. Could it be that she hurriedly came out of seclusion after hearing the news and came to discuss with me face to face? Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing's expression became more dignified and he became more worried. Initially, he wanted to keep it a secret and secretly head to Beiming Palace alone to rescue Ji Ku. But now, Yun Yaro also knew about it and was on her way. No matter how worried he was about Ji Ku's safety, he could only give up on the idea for the time being and patiently wait for Yun Yaro's arrival. After a moment of consideration, he stood up and walked out of the secret room. When the Huanglong Daoist and several elders outside the door saw him come out, they immediately surrounded him and tried to persuade him. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said with a solemn expression, "Everyone, there's no need to persuade me anymore. Go back and rest. My wife is about to arrive at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. I will not leave. I will wait for her here." Knowing that he wouldn't be leaving for the time being, Huanglong and the other elders heaved a sigh of relief. Only then did they bow and bid farewell. However, Huanglong paid extra attention to this. He asked the 2 elders to stay behind and guard the door of the secret room. He couldn't help but worry. What if Shizuan was just looking for an excuse to quietly slip away? A day and a night had passed. The 2 elders had been guarding the door of the secret room and hadn't left at all. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing had been in the secret room the whole time. No one knew what he was fiddling with, but he didn't show his face again. Until evening, when the sun set in the west. A fiery red stream of light sped over from the south and landed on the training hall. After the fiery light dissipated, a 1,000-foot-long, golden-red glazed fire dragon appeared. A beautiful woman in a white dress flew down from the dragon's back. Seeing this, the messenger guards hurriedly rushed into the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains Palace to report the news. A moment later, The Huanglong Daoist rushed to the training hall and personally welcomed the woman in the white dress. The woman in the white dress was Yun Yarrow. She put away the glazed fire dragon and stood under the sword steely to wait. The Huanglong Daoist quickly walked in front of her and bowed. Disciple Huanglong greets Shamu. Yun Yarrow hurriedly rushed to the pillar of Heaven's mountains, thinking about Ji Ku's matter. Unexpectedly, the Huanglong Daoist's words made her frown, and her expression was slightly strange. She was only a young woman in her 20s, but the Huanglong Daoist was a white-haired senior who had lived for thousands of years. The title of Shamu sounded awkward when it came out of the Huanglong Daoist's mouth. However, Yun Yarrow didn't care about this. She nodded slightly to the Huanglong Daoist and ordered, "Huanglong, rise. Quickly bring me to see Tianxing." The Huanglong Daoist quickly led the way for her. "Shamu, please follow me." Then, he led Yun Yarrow through the training hall and rushed to the pillar of Heaven's Mountains Palace. They entered Ji Tianxing's room. The room was clean and elegant, but there was no one in sight. "Shamu, please wait here for a moment. I will go and invite Master over." With that, Huanglong quickly rushed to Ji Tianxing's secret room. Yun Yarrow stood in the middle of the room and looked around calmly. Not long after, Ji Tianxing rushed over after hearing the news. "Yarrow Yao, why are you here?" As soon as she entered the room, Ji Tianxing welcomed her with a worried face. He held Yun Yarrow's hands and looked at her from head to toe. "Aren't you cultivating in seclusion at the Luotian mountain? How can you give up halfway? Moreover, you are pregnant now. How can you rush to the pillar of Heaven's mountains alone? It's too dangerous." As he spoke, he pulled Yun Yarrow to sit at the table and poured her a cup of tea. Seeing how worried he was, Yun Yarrow smiled and shook her head. She comforted him. "Husband, you don't have to worry. I have successfully refined the wind-fire divine pearl. Just the day before yesterday, I successfully broke through to the martial sage realm and ended my seclusion. I didn't expect Granny Long to tell me the news the day after I came out of seclusion. That's why I rushed over." Ji Tianxing heaved a sigh of relief and nodded in relief. "You have finally broken through to the martial sage realm. That's great. However, what you should do now is to rest and stabilize your cultivation. It's not suitable for you to travel long distances." Yun Yarrow held his hands and looked at him with clear eyes. She said solemnly, "Husband, it would be fine if I didn't know about this. However, now that I know about this, how can I cultivate in peace? How can I sit by and do nothing? I know that Ji Ku's feelings for you are higher than the sky and deeper than the sea. For you, she was willing to go to Beiming Palace and become a spy. She was even willing to sacrifice everything. We owe her. No matter what, we have to save her. Husband, I want to go with you. As husband and wife, we will definitely be able to save Ji Ku successfully." Ji Tianxing looked at her with a complicated expression. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. He felt guilty, relieved and touched. "Yarrow Yarrow, I originally wanted to go to Beiming Palace to save her without telling you and the child. I owe her too much. If I don't save her, I'm not fit to be a human. However, if I do that, I'll be letting you and the child down. I didn't expect you to understand my feelings and support my decision. Thank you." Ji Tianxing suppressed his emotions and said firmly, "Yarrow Yarrow, you are pregnant and Beiming Palace is too dangerous. You can't go. I have more confidence if I go alone. I will leave tonight. You stay at Pillar of Heaven's Mountains and wait patiently for my news." Chapter 2256. From the beginning to the end, Ji Tianxing had never thought of bringing Yun Yarrow to Beiming Mountain. In fact, he had planned to hide it from Yun Yarrow from the beginning. After all, he owed Ji Ku, but Yun Yarrow and the two children did not. He would never let Yun Yarrow and the children fall into a life-and-death situation. Even if he died in battle at Beiming Mountain, he was not willing to let Yun Yarrow and the children get hurt. However, after hearing his words, Yun Yarrow shook her head repeatedly and said firmly, "Husband, I will never allow you to go alone. Since we are husband and wife, we should be in the same boat through thick and thin. Chen Chen and Yaya have also agreed with my decision. Our family will be together forever." Ji Tianxing fell silent and looked at Yun Yarrow deeply. He understood Yoon Yaro's nature and knew that she was soft on the outside but tough on the inside. Since she had made a decision, she would not change it easily. No matter how he tried to persuade her, it was useless. Since that was the case, he simply did not say anything more. Anyway, he had already expected this outcome and had made the corresponding preparations. He looked at Yoon Yaro gently and slowly stretched out his arms to pull her into his arms and hug her tightly. Yaro Yaro, being able to marry you is the greatest happiness in my life. You know me, understand me, respect me, and love me. I have no regrets in this life. He seemed to be muttering to himself in a low voice and stroked Yoon Yaro's long hair reluctantly. Yoon Yaro leaned on his shoulder and revealed a blissful smile on her beautiful face. After a long time, the two of them separated and the warm atmosphere gradually faded. Ji Tianxing pulled Yoon Yaro into the secret room. Yaro Yaro, you must be tired after rushing here. Let's meditate here for the night. We have to conserve our energy and set off early tomorrow morning. Yoon Yaro did not doubt his words and nodded in agreement. Then, she sat cross-legged on the futon and closed her eyes to cultivate and consolidate her martial arts foundation. When she entered the state of cultivation, Ji Tianxing quietly left the secret room. After closing the door of the secret chamber, he looked at the stone door with a complicated expression and murmured to himself, Yaro Yaro, forgive my selfishness. I can't take you with me on this adventure. What I owe Ku, even if I have to pay it back with my life, I will have no regrets. But you and our child must live well. Nothing must happen to you. Then, he raised both of his palms and formed a hand seal. His spiritual energy poured into the door of the secret room. Suddenly, the holy formation that shrouded the secret room was activated. 2 lines of golden light appeared. A golden light barrier with a radius of 1,000 feet sealed off the entire secret chamber. Over the past day and night, he knew that Yoon Yaro would come, so he set up this formation in the secret room. This was a top-notch saint formation with unparalleled defensive power. Other than him, there was no other martial saint who could break it. After activating the array, Ji Tianxing stood quietly outside the door for a while. Then, he turned and left. He still did not change his mind and wanted to go to Beiming Palace alone. However, before he left the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, he left an order in Huanglong Daoist study. Huanglong, you must protect the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains when I am not here. Nothing must go wrong. Otherwise, I will punish you. Also, my wife, Yoon Yaro, is cultivating in the secret chamber. You must send someone to guard outside the chamber. You must not let her leave. If I don't come back, you must obey my wife's orders and assist her wholeheartedly in managing the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. You must not disobey. There were only 3 sentences in the order, but they were strictly worded and left no room for doubt. In the dead of night, everything was silent. Ji Tianxing used the secret technique of invisibility and left the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains silently. He flew to the north as fast as lightning. He had already made plans and preparations for his trip to Beiming Palace. No matter what kind of danger he faced, he was confident that he could resolve it. At the very least, he had to successfully rescue Ji Ku and come back alive. The night passed very quickly. The next morning, the sun had just risen. Yoon Yaro, who was in the secret chamber, slowly ended her cultivation. After a night, her martial arts foundation had been consolidated and she had returned to her peak condition. However, when she opened her eyes, she realized that she was the only one in the secret chamber. Ji Tianxing was not in the secret chamber. She instinctively frowned and had a bad premonition. However, she still comforted herself in her heart. Perhaps Tianxing was busy with other things. She got up and walked to the door. She waved her hand and shot out a ray of golden light to open the door of the secret chamber. However, the ray of golden light entered the stone door. It was like a clay ox entering the sea. There was no reaction. What's going on? She murmured in confusion. She pressed her palms on the stone door and released a surge of dharmic powers to try to open the door again. However, the stone door lit up with a layer of golden light and released a majestic force that bounced her away. She was forced to take a few steps back before she could steady herself. She immediately understood the reason. Tianxing, he actually Set up a sealing array to trap me in the secret chamber and left alone? Of course, she could tell that the sacred array that sealed the secret chamber was set up by Ji Tianxing. Moreover, the power of this sacred array was vast and mighty, but it would not hurt her. Other than Ji Tianxing, who else could have such an ability? Yun Yarrow frowned and looked at the stone door. Her face was filled with anxiety and worry. She muttered to herself, Tianxing, oh Tianxing, you know that I won't hold a grudge against you, and I won't stop you from rescuing Ji Ku. Why are you still unwilling to take me with you? From the day we got married, I swore to live and die with you. Why are you abandoning me and leaving alone? Actually, she also knew that Ji Tianxing did this to protect her and their 2 children. In the face of danger, he would rather face it alone than drag his wife and children down with him. Yun Yarrow was touched, but she became even more worried and anxious. At this moment, Chunchen's voice sounded in her mind. She consoled her, Mother, Father is protecting us. He doesn't want us to take the risk. Yaya also said, Mother, Father is going to take the risk alone, but he's trapping us here. Quickly think of a way to break the array set up by Father. We'll go help him. Yun Yarrow nodded and said calmly, All right, you 2 have to help Mother too. Let's work together to break the array set up by your father. With that, she formed a seal with both hands. She quickly waved her hands and formed a profound seal. She swiped her index and middle fingers in front of her eyes. Immediately, her eyes turned icy blue and lit up with a deep brilliance. When she looked at the secret chamber's stone door and walls again, she saw that the scene had changed. Thousands of golden lines and veins appeared. She observed with rapt attention. Her brain also worked quickly calculating and deducing the lines and veins of the array. At the same time, in the Huanglong Daoist study. He had just entered the study and was about to deal with official business when he found a jade slip on the desk. He picked up the jade slip and used his divine sense to read the information inside. Immediately, Ji Tianxing's dignified voice sounded in his mind. After a few breaths, he heard Ji Tianxing's order and his expression changed drastically. Chapter 2257. Huanglong Daoist originally thought that his master's wife, Yun Yarrow, would definitely be able to dissuade his master. But he did not expect that his master would still go to Beiming Palace alone. Even his wife, Yun Yarrow, was trapped in the secret chamber. He finally understood that his master had made up his mind, and it was useless no matter who tried to persuade him. Moreover, the last sentence of his master's order seemed to be his last words. This made his heart extremely heavy, and a thick layer of haze covered it. But things had already come to this, and he was powerless to change anything. The only thing he could do was to follow his master's order and guard the door of the secret chamber, and never let his master's wife leave. At the same time, he would do his best to protect Tianzhu Mountain. He sat cross-legged outside the secret chamber, closed his eyes, and meditated, trying to calm his mind. But not long after, he sensed a strong energy fluctuation in the secret chamber. He opened his eyes and saw that the walls of the secret chamber were shining with a golden brilliance. It was obvious that the defensive array had been activated. Seeing this scene, Huanglong Daoist immediately understood. With Master's intelligence, she must have discovered that Master sneaked away and set up a sealing array in the secret chamber. She is most likely trying to break the array. Unfortunately, who can break the sacred array set up by Master himself? Huanglong Daoist muttered to himself, pretending that nothing had happened, and continued to close his eyes and rest outside the door. At the same time, in the secret chamber, Yun Yarrow stood in the middle of the secret chamber, waving her palms with a solemn expression, and constantly forming array seals. She released a colorful brilliance and injected it into the surrounding walls, trying to break the array. For a full 4 hours, she did not stop casting the spell for a single moment, never once stopping. She formed tens of thousands of array seals and made hundreds of attempts. However, the result was no exception. The array seals she released were all swallowed by the array, and it did not cause much of a reaction. Fortunately, after so many attempts, the array had undergone many changes, and she had a deeper understanding of arrays. She temporarily stopped casting and stared at the array, frowning as she pondered. Although the structure and veins of this array are somewhat similar to the 3-origin fire array and the 9 stars return to dust array. However, I have tried over 100 times but to no avail. I am unable to unlock the meridians. Could it be that I'm going in the wrong direction? The saint formation set up by Tianxing has nothing to do with those 2 formations. Her brain was working at high speed, deducing and calculating the structure of the array. At this moment, Yaya comforted her considerately. Mother, don't worry. Father is a 1 in a million genius, and is now the strongest person below the martial god. The saint array that he had personally set up was, of course, incomparably marvelous and unfathomable. However, Father used this formation to trap you, but he didn't want you to suffer any harm. You can think about what kind of formation it is based on this point. Yun Yaro's eyes lit up when she heard Yaya's reminder. She felt enlightened all of a sudden. Yeah. Yaya was still the smartest. Mother only wanted to observe the structure of the array and guess what kind of array it was, but she forgot about this point. Your father is very meticulous. Since he doesn't want to hurt us, this array formation doesn't have any offensive capabilities. This kind of formation that was only used for sealing and posed no threat was extremely rare. I have to think about it carefully. Perhaps I can find the answer. Yun Yaro revealed a gratified smile. She began to search through her memories for saint-level formations that met this condition. Soon, Chen Chen, who had been silent all this time, seemed to have thought of something. He transmitted his voice to Yun Yaro through his soul. Mother, when you were trying to break the array just now, Chen Chen was observing the array's reaction and changes. Chen Chen thought for a long time and roughly guessed that the array that Father had set up could be the 9 Heaven Star Array or the ultimate Crimson Golden Star Array. When Father taught me the 9 Heavens Cloud Dragon technique and taught Yaya the Infinite Stars technique, these 2 types of saint formations were included. Yun Yaro's eyes lit up when she heard this. 9 Heavens Star Array? Ultimate Crimson Golden Star Array? I don't seem to have heard of these 2 formations in my memories. Chen Chen, according to your judgment, what kind of formation is this? Chen Chen considered for a moment, then said with certainty, according to my judgment, it should be the ultimate Crimson Golden Star Array. If it's the 9 Heaven Star Array, it will have 9 main meridians that gather the power of more than 300 stars. The brilliance of the stars is silvery white, while this great formation is dark gold. Therefore, the most likely possibility is the ultimate Crimson Golden Star Array. Yun Yaro could not help but nod when she heard his explanation. She asked, Chen Chen, then do you know how to break the array? Chen Chen was silent for a moment, then explained, Mother, Chen Chen has been focusing on cultivating the 9 Heavens Cloud Dragon technique. Even if I were to study the array, it would be useless. Therefore, I did not waste my time on it. The light in Yun Yaro's eyes dimmed. She was a little disappointed. However, Chen Chen continued, Mother, don't be anxious. Chen Chen will study the array now and try to master the ultimate Crimson Golden Star Array in the shortest time possible. Yun Yaro's heart reignited with a glimmer of hope. She asked tentatively, Chen Chen, how long will you need? Is there enough time? Chen Chen did not give a definite answer. He only said, Mother, don't worry. Chen Chen will do his best. After that, he went silent. Clearly, he had gone to study the array. Yun Yaro could only wait patiently. She took the opportunity to meditate and recover her magic power. Before she knew it, 24 hours had passed. Yun Yaro meditated for an entire day. Her magic power had recovered to its peak. At this moment, Chen Chen's voice suddenly sounded in her mind. His tone was filled with joy and pride. Mother, Chen Chen has finished studying. I've basically mastered the ultimate Crimson Golden Star Array. Yun Yaro was stunned when she heard this news. She said in disbelief, What? So fast? It's only been a day. She could not believe that her son was so monstrous. He had only used 24 hours to master a top-notch holy formation. If Chen Chen's words were true, the world would be shocked when this news spread throughout the continent. Countless people would be so shocked that their eyeballs would pop out. Chen Chen was neither proud nor did he want to waste time. He said calmly, Mother, there's no time to lose. Do as I say now. We'll try our best. Yun Yarrow calmed herself down and nodded hurriedly. All right. Mother believes in you. Chen Chen said solemnly, step on the center of the palace with your left foot. Raise your head and look at the sky. Hold the 3-foot sword in your right hand. Point it all at Mount Jen. Although his voice was still very young, his tone was solemn. He chanted the incantation methodically. It was rather imposing. Yun Yarrow did not hesitate. She followed his instructions. She stepped on the center of the palace and 9 leaps. She formed the incantation with both hands and began trying to break the array. She shot out several streaks of magic power light one after another, hitting specific locations. Her footwork also changed accordingly. The array that enveloped the secret room immediately reacted. Thousands of meridians appeared, shining with golden light. Chapter 2258. The facts proved that Chunchen's deduction was correct. The sacred formation that enveloped the secret chamber was the ultimate crimson golden star formation. However, Ji Tianxing had added some changes to it. However, this did not affect the main structure of the formation. Under Chunchen's guidance, Yun Yarrow stepped on the stars and clenched her fingers together. She continuously cast spells, producing dazzling radiance. She did not stop for a full 6 hours. In total, she formed more than 10,000 seals. It was impossible for an ordinary martial saint to memorize such a complicated method to break the formation in one go, much less execute it smoothly. However, Chen Chen did it. She memorized the steps and sequence to break the formation without making any mistakes. Yun Yarrow did it too. She followed Chunchen's guidance and formed the seals without missing a step. Both mother and son were peerless geniuses that only appeared once in 1,000 years. Finally, 6 hours passed. Yun Yarrow finished casting and successfully broke the ultimate crimson golden star formation. At that moment, the golden light barrier that enveloped the secret chamber released a dazzling light. Then, the golden light quickly retracted into the wall. The entire formation also closed. Yun Yarrow watched the formation close with her own eyes. She revealed a gratified expression and said proudly in her heart, Chen Chen, how can you be so monstrous? Even if there are countless geniuses in the world, compared to you, they are like fireflies to the moon. They can't be compared. Yaya was also very excited. She said excitedly, brother is simply too powerful. I'm afraid that other than father and mother, no one can compare to brother's talent. Chen Chen received such praise, but she was neither arrogant nor impatient. She said calmly, Mother, you've been casting spells continuously for a few hours. Your magic power must be depleted. You should recover your magic power first. Then, we'll go look for father. Yun Yarrow thought for a moment and shook her head. No, your father has already left for a day and a half. I have to hurry over at my fastest speed to find him. I still need 2 days on the way. It's enough for me to recover my magic power. Then, she waved her hands and sent out 2 rays of blue light into the secret chamber's stone door. With a muffled creak 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 sound, the stone door slowly opened. Yun Yarrow hurriedly stepped out of the secret chamber. However, as soon as she reached the door of the secret room, she was stopped by a white-haired old man who wore an apricot-yellow Taoist robe and held a horsetail whisk. This person was the Huanglong Daoist who was guarding outside the door. For the past 1.5 days, he had been standing guard outside the door, not taking a single step out. In the past few hours, not only did he feel the energy fluctuations in the secret room, but he also saw the array light up with golden light. He knew that Yun Yarrow had never given up on cracking the array. However, he knew that it was impossible for Yun Yarrow to break the formation set up by Ji Tianxing. At this moment, he was dumbfounded when he saw Yun Yarrow open the door of the secret chamber and appear at the door. Mistress, you actually broke Master's array? How is this possible? Huanglong Daoist couldn't believe his eyes. He stared at Yun Yarrow, dumbfounded. Yun Yarrow frowned and looked at him, asking, Huanglong, why are you here? Have you been guarding outside the secret chamber all this time? Huanglong Daoist came back to his senses and didn't dare to hide anything. He hurriedly explained, Mistress, that's right. This disciple was ordered by Master to guard here. Yun Yarrow nodded to show that she understood. She said in a dignified tone, Huang Long, get out of the way. I'm going to find Tianqing. I can't let him take the risk alone. Huang Long Daoist refused to back down. He persuaded her earnestly, Mistress, with your talent and wisdom, of course you can understand that Master did this with good intentions. He would rather take the risk himself and die than be a burden to you and your child. Now that you've cracked the array, if you really go to Beiming Mountain, wouldn't his painstaking efforts be in vain? Before Master left, he left a decree for this disciple. Please forgive me, Mistress. This disciple will never allow you to leave. Yun Yarrow saw that his attitude was firm and that he would not back down. She said in a low voice, Huang Long, if you can understand Tianqing's feelings, you can also understand my worries. Don't worry, I won't do anything I'm not confident in, and I definitely won't watch as Tianqing fights alone. I'll send a message to God Lord Luo Shui right now and ask her to help me save Tianqing. Huang Long Daoist was taken aback by these words. Soon after, he revealed a look of pleasant surprise and nodded repeatedly. Right. That's right. Mistress, you're the most considerate. Only God Lord Luo Shui can break into Beiming Palace and save Master and Miss Arku. You're the eldest senior sister of Luo Shui Mountain, the future overlord of Luo Shui Divine Kingdom. Only you can ask Martial God Luo Shui for help. In truth, Huang Long Daoist had long since thought that only a martial god expert could guarantee the safety of Ji Tianqing and Arku. However, his words carried little weight, and he had no friendship with martial god Luo Shui, much less contact him. He could only dispel this thought. Since Yun Yarrow had spoken, he naturally agreed wholeheartedly. Yun Yarrow didn't waste any time. She hurriedly took out a transmission jade slip and sent a message to martial god Luo Shui. Then, she said to Huang Long Daoist, I've already sent a message to ask God Lord Luo Shui for help. You can rest assured now, right? Huang Long Daoist nodded and bowed gratefully. Many thanks, Mistress. If God Lord Luo Shui appears and successfully saves Master and Miss Arku, Pillar of Heaven's Mountain will forever remember this kindness. With that, he no longer stopped Yun Yarrow and took the initiative to retreat to the side. Yun Yarrow gave him a few words of advice before quickly leaving Pillar of Heaven's palace. Arriving at the training ground, she summoned the glass-fire dragon and rushed to the north as fast as lightning. Huang Long Daoist stood in place and watched the glass-fire dragon disappear into the horizon. He prayed in his heart, I hope Master, Mistress, and Miss Arku can return safely. Dark North Mountain, near the Holy City. It was late at night. The sky was as dark as ink, and cold winds howled in the night sky. The newly constructed Holy City was as majestic and dignified as ever. However, there were only around 1 million demons in the Holy City. It was no longer as prosperous as before. In the past, the city would have been filled with lights, but now, it was dark and desolate. Whoosh! An invisible black silhouette tore through the night sky and flew above the Holy City, stopping in the midst of a demonic cloud. This black silhouette was none other than the invisible Ji Tianqing. After 2 days of traveling at full speed, he had finally arrived at the demon race's holy city from Pillar of Heaven's Mountain. 1,000 li to the north, across a brown wasteland, he would reach the Divine Mountain. The summit of the Divine Mountain was his goal, Dark North Palace. However, he had long since made preparations and plans. He would not rashly charge into Dark North Palace. He hid in the night sky and observed the holy city from above, quietly waiting for an hour. Only when a group of black-armored demon guards emerged from the city lord's mansion did he begin to move. Whoosh! Chapter 2259. Ji Ku had once mentioned something to Ji Tianqing. After Beiming Palace was rebuilt, it was still lacking many things. There were cultivation resources, as well as various miscellaneous items. In the next few months, the things that were lacking would have to be gradually replenished. Thus, every 2 or 3 days, Beiming Palace would send a group of guards to the holy city. The city lord's mansion would prepare the things that Beiming Palace lacked in advance, and the guards would bring them back. As the steward of internal affairs, Ji Ku was well aware of this matter. In the past, Ji Tianqing had not taken this matter to heart. Only after Ji Ku's incident and when he was considering a plan of action did he remember this matter. The group of demon race guards were all members of Beiming Palace. They possessed identity tokens and could enter Beiming Palace at will. Thus, they became Ji Tianxing's targets. This group of guards had a total of 18 people. They all wore cold black metal armor and heavy helmets, revealing only their purple or dark red eyes. After they left the city lord's mansion, they silently flew into the night sky and leisurely rushed back to Beiming Palace. Ji Tianxing silently followed behind them, maintaining a distance of 100 meters so that he was not discovered. After 100 breaths of time, the demon race guards were flying above a mountain range. The night was pitch black, and the dense devil qi and black clouds obscured them from view. At this moment, Ji Tianxing finally made his move. Using the armillary heaven secret art, he controlled the power of the world and transformed it into a giant invisible hand that instantly captured a guard. This guard walked at the very back of the group, looking completely unconcerned. It was obvious that he had carried out this mission many times and had always been safe, so he was not vigilant. But he did not expect that death would descend upon him without any warning. The giant invisible hand firmly restrained him, making him unable to move or even make a sound. Then, an invisible spike formed from spiritual energy viciously pierced his spiritual energy. He was killed on the spot without making a single sound. Even at the moment of his death, he did not know what had happened, nor did he know who the murderer was. After Ji Tianxing killed the black-armored guard, his divine soul left his body and entered this person's body. As for his real body, he had placed it in the sword world, safe and sound. Next, Ji Tianxing would be in charge of controlling the body of the demon clan guard. On the surface, this person did not seem to have changed at all. But in reality, his soul had already been replaced by Ji Tianxing. From the moment Ji Tianxing made his move to the moment he completed the possession, it was only a matter of a blink of an eye. The dozen or so guards at the front of the group did not notice anything amiss. They maintained a steady speed and flew towards Beiming Palace. Ji Tianxing adapted to his new body and sped up to catch up. Nothing was said along the way. Half an hour later, the 18 guards returned to Beiming Palace. They first went to the Internal Affairs Hall and took out various resources and miscellaneous items from their spatial rings and handed them to the Internal Affairs Manager. After completing the mission, everyone left the Internal Affairs Palace and returned to their respective residences. Ji Tianxing was thinking about where to find Ji Ku's whereabouts. At this time, a black-armored guard came up and patted his shoulder familiarly. He smiled lightly and said, "Ah man, come to my place for a drink. Tonight at the City Lord's mansion, Captain, you gave me a bottle of good wine. Drinking it can strengthen my qi and blood and increase my cultivation for several years." Only now did Ji Tianxing know that this body was called a man. Okay. He nodded without hesitation and replied. He spoke in the demon language. In order not to expose his identity, his words were very short. The black-armored guard did not suspect anything. He brought him into Beiming Palace and to a room in the backyard. This room only had 2 rooms. The bedroom inside and the living room outside. The area was not big. There was also a secret room underground used for meditation and cultivation. The black-armored guard pulled Ji Tianxing to a seat in the living room. He took out a bottle of wine and a few dishes from his spatial ring and began to eat and drink with Ji Tianxing. The wine was the demon race's common strong blood wine. The dishes were made from demon beast meat. It was rough and fishy, making it hard to swallow. But Ji Tianxing did not want to reveal anything. He could only drink and eat as if nothing had happened. He rarely took the initiative to speak. The black-armored guard saw that he was silent and comforted him straightforwardly. "Ah man, why aren't you saying anything? Are you still angry about that matter? Get over it. Although we are the guards of Beiming Palace, we are still lowly servants. The manager can scold or hit us as he wishes. As long as you listen to brother, you will have a share of my benefits in the future." Ji Tianxing then knew that this person was called Pu Cheng. He had been in Beiming Palace for several years. As for the matter between Ah Man and Pu Cheng, he had no interest in knowing. He was a man of few words but kept urging Pu Cheng to drink. In 15 minutes, Pu Cheng had drunk more than half of the flask of strong blood wine. He was so drunk he could not think clearly. But he was like many people. The more drunk he was, the more he spoke. He did not even think before he spoke. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing kept probing Pu Cheng, trying to find out more information. I heard that our internal affairs deacon is a human female impersonating. Isn't that so? Pu Cheng hugged the flask of wine and said with drunken eyes, she hid it really well, but she still could not escape the great Mo Saint's eyes. Ji Tianxing continued to ask, in a few days, she will be executed. Who will be in charge of watching over her? Pu Cheng hugged the flask of wine and drank a few mouthfuls of the dark red blood wine. He said unclearly, in any case, there are those bastards from the torture department. It has nothing to do with us. Let me tell you, our man, this is a fight between immortals. We are just small fries, we should not interfere. Torture department. Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows and had a plan in mind. Pu Cheng lay drunk on the table and said with a smile with his eyes closed, what is it? Are you thinking of being whipped by the executioner last month? Be careful in the future. That torture department is hell. If you go in, even if you don't die, you will lose half your life. Ji Tianxing no longer paid any attention to him. He stretched out his hand and shot out a formless soul power that struck his divine soul. Pu Cheng immediately fell into a deep sleep and quieted down. Ji Tianxing quietly left and flew out of Beiming Palace. He looked around for the location of the torture department. The torture department was at the cliff behind Beiming Palace. It was shaped like a skull and was very eerie and eye-catching. After Ji Tianxing found the torture department, he hid in the shadows and observed for a long time. However, there were large numbers of guards inside and outside the torture department. There were also many saint-level formations. The defense was very tight. He even faintly felt that there were a few faint powerful consciousness shrouding the torture department. He immediately guessed that Ji Ku was imprisoned in the torture department. The martial saints of the Mo race were watching the movements of the torture department to prevent him from breaking out of the prison. If he rashly appeared or acted, he would definitely be surrounded and attacked. The present torture department looked calm on the surface, but in reality, it had already set up an inescapable net. Chapter 2260. The night was as dark as ink. Beiming Palace was shrouded in demonic energy and black clouds. The atmosphere was heavy and oppressive. Ji Tianxing quietly returned to Park Cheng's residence. He sat at the table with an indifferent expression, staring deeply at the table. He was thinking about how to rescue Ji Ku. There had never been a moment when he was as anxious and worried as he was now. He knew that Ji Ku was imprisoned in the torture department and was less than 10,000 zhong away from him, but he could not immediately rescue her. Who could understand this kind of torment? He did not know what kind of suffering and torture Ji Ku was enduring. There was only one thing he was sure of. With the protection of the heavenly star chain, Ji Ku's soul would not be destroyed. However, she could only preserve her life. That was all. Ji Tianxing's mind spun quickly, and one idea after another appeared. However, he thought of more than a dozen plans, but none of them could withstand scrutiny. He could only give them all up. Unknowingly, 4 hours passed. It was daybreak. Park Cheng was lying motionlessly on the table, sleeping soundly. At this moment, the door was kicked open. A middle-aged devilish being in a suit of black armor strode into the room with an enraged expression. This person was also a guard of Beiming Palace, but he was the captain of the guards. He glanced at the sleeping Park Cheng, and then his cold gaze landed on Ji Tianxing. He angrily shouted, "You two short-lived animals, have you forgotten today's mission? The entire team is waiting for you. What are you two doing hiding in the room?" Ji Tianxing glanced at him indifferently, but did not speak. The captain saw the wine jug on the table and suddenly realized. He grinned. Good. The two little bastards were actually hiding in the room to drink wine, and they were even drunk to the point of being dead drunk. Compete. So lawless. Aren't you afraid that this seat will send you to the torture department and skin you alive? Hearing this, Ji Tianxing's eyes flashed. He immediately had an idea. He slowly stood up and stared coldly at the captain, a cold smile on his lips. Idiot, I've tolerated you for a long time. The guard captain was stunned on the spot. He stared at him and asked in disbelief, "What did you say?" The new man in front of him had always been dull and cowardly. He simply couldn't believe that a man dared to scold him to his face. "Little bastard, I see that you've gone against the heavens." The guard captain flew into a rage, and his eyes turned scarlet. Without hesitation, he raised his fists and smashed them toward Ji Tianxing's head. In a fit of rage, he punched without holding back. He wished he could kill Ji Tianxing on the spot. Ji Tianxing naturally wouldn't avoid it. He smiled contemptuously and raised his hand to slap him. "Pa!" Before the guard captain could even touch Ji Tianxing, he was slapped in the face, and a crisp sound rang out. His vision went dark, and he was sent flying backward with his head spinning. Thud! The door was smashed into pieces, and he fell into the courtyard. When he got up from the ground, his head was covered in blood, and half of his face was a bloody mess. Suffering such a heavy injury, the guard captain was dizzy. He was so angry that he almost passed out. He staggered up, pointed at Ji Tianxing in the room, and cursed hysterically, "You little bastard. You dare to go against your superior, you're finished. Just you wait, I can't do anything to you, but someone will kill you." With that, the guard captain staggered and left, running as fast as the wind to the Department of Torture. Ji Tianxing didn't chase after him. Watching the guard captain's figure disappear into the distance, a playful sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Complain to the Department of Torture? That's exactly what I want." This thought flashed through his mind. He turned back to the table and sat down, waiting silently. At this time, Pu Cheng, who had been sleeping soundly, woke up in a daze. He stretched, yawned, and looked sleepily at Ji Tianxing. He couldn't help but complain, "A man, what's wrong with you? You didn't even drink 2 mouthfuls last night, and you poured it all into my stomach. Oh no." Halfway through his words, his expression suddenly changed. He jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, and ran out in a hurry. "We're finished. It's already morning, but we haven't left. The captain will definitely punish us." He had just run to the door when he saw that the door had been shattered and scattered on the ground. He was dumbfounded. He turned his head to look at Ji Tianxing. Seeing him still sitting there, Pu Cheng was dumbfounded. "A man, what are you standing there for? What's with this door? Don't tell me I'm drunk again." Ji Tianxing waved his hand at him, and said with a light smile, "It's not your fault, you should leave, I won't go." "Chem?" Pu Cheng stared at him with wide eyes, even more confused. "You don't want to live anymore? Listen to me, come with me, let's go find the captain to apologize, and give him some benefits." Before he could finish, a vicious curse came from outside the courtyard. "You want to apologize now? It's too late. Even if you kneel down and call me father, it's useless." Pu Cheng turned his head to look at the courtyard, and saw the captain of the guards, whose face was covered in blood, leading 2 executioners in blood-red armor, rushing over with a murderous aura. His expression changed on the spot, and he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Damn it. Isn't it just being drunk and delaying the time? Do you have to report to the torture department? The captain of the guards rushed over with a sinister smile, and kicked him to the ground. He rushed into the room like a fierce tiger, pointed at Ji Tianxing and shouted, "Sir Executioner, it's this bastard. He has no respect for the law, caused trouble when drunk, offended his superiors, and beat me up so badly." The 2 executioners, who were covered in the smell of blood, stepped into the room expressionlessly, and took out shackles without another word, wanting to tie up Ji Tianxing. Pu Cheng scrambled into the room, and quickly stopped the 2 executioners, anxiously bowing and apologizing. "Sir, please wait. What did our man do wrong, for you to want to arrest him? Also, Sir Captain, we did delay the time, this is our fault. But you don't need to invite the torture department, sir." The captain of the guards glared fiercely at him, and shouted angrily, "Pu Cheng, scram to the side, I'll settle this with you later." What is going on? Pu Cheng was stunned, and refused to move, feeling helpless and wronged. Ji Tianxing slowly stood up, patted his shoulder, and transmitted his voice, "It's not your fault, if you don't want to die, then move, don't speak nonsense. Pu Cheng turned his head to look at him, his eyes filled with confusion and surprise. He didn't dare to believe it. Our man, who had always been very weak, suddenly seemed like a different person. While he was in a daze, the two executioners tied up Ji Tianxing and dragged him out of the room. Ji Tianxing did not resist and walked expressionlessly towards the torture department. Pu Cheng looked at his back as he left. His mind was in a mess, and he felt that something was wrong. Chapter 2261. The guard captain stood outside the palace walls and watched as Ji Tianxing was escorted into the torture department. He raised his hand to wipe off the bloodstains on his face, revealing a smug grin. "Little bastard. You want to fight me? I'll kill you." After viciously cursing, he turned around and left in satisfaction. Soon, two executioners escorted Ji Tianxing into the dark, bloody, and putrid torture department. There was a semicircular hall at the entrance. There were 6 passageways connected to it. There were several guards guarding the entrance of each passageway. The executioners escorted Ji Tianxing into the second passageway on the left. They headed to the deepest prison cell. The prison cell was not big. It was only 30 feet square. 2 dark red gemstone lamps were lit in the corner. All kinds of ferocious torture instruments were hung on the walls. 2 executioners tied Ji Tianxing to a dark red pillar. They used a few rusty and blood-stained chains to tie him up. Then, one of them took out a dark purple soul-punishing whip and said expressionlessly, "You violated the rules of Beiming Palace. You drank too much and offended your superiors. According to the law, you should be punished with 50 lashes and imprisoned for a month to reflect on your mistakes." The executioner waved the long soul-punishing whip and whipped it at Ji Tianxing. Crack, crack. A series of crisp cracking sounds could be heard. A dazzling purple light flashed. The vicious soul-punishing whip struck Ji Tianxing's body again and again, tearing his skin and flesh apart and causing blood to spurt out. However, he kept his head down and did not make a sound. After all, this body did not belong to him. He had already used a little trick to sever the connection between his divine soul and his body. Even if this body was cut into pieces, he would not feel any pain. However, the executioner was a little perverted. Seeing that he did not scream or twitch, he became angrier and waved the soul-punishing whip with all his might. "Me. You're quite stubborn. Since you don't know how to repent, I'll add another 10 lashes. Just like that, the original 50 lashes became 60 lashes. 100 breaths later, the execution was finally over. The executioner put away the soul-punishing whip and left the cell expressionlessly. As for Ji Tianxing's body, his clothes were ragged and his flesh was badly mangled. He had been beaten to a horrible state. But he didn't care. His hair was disheveled and he lowered his head, not saying a word. At first glance, it looked like he had fainted from the beating. But in fact, he was secretly probing the situation in the torture department with his soul. He had to find Ji Ku's location as soon as possible and determine which cell she was imprisoned in. Only then could he proceed with the next step of his plan. In Beiming Palace. In a hidden and spacious secret room. More than a dozen gemstone lamps were lit on the walls, illuminating the secret room in a dark red color. There was a stone table in the middle of the secret room. On it were several plates of spirit fruits and pastries, as well as a pot of spirit tea. 4 experts with different appearances were sitting by the stone table, waiting quietly. 3 of them were demon race experts. There was the great demon Saint Ling Xian in a black robe, the 3rd demon Saint Sheng Tuo, and a newly promoted demon saint, a bald man wearing a skull mask. As for the 4th person, it was an Yu, who wore silver armor and looked like a half-lion man. Ever since they decided on the plan to wait for the rabbit to appear, the 4 of them had been hiding in this secret room, patiently waiting. After a few days, none of them were in the mood to talk. They all closed their eyes and rested. At this moment, the stone door of the secret room opened. A guard commander walked in, his expression respectful as he walked to Ling Xian's side and bowed respectfully. Ling Xian opened his eyes and asked in a low voice, "It's been a few days. Is there still no movement?" The guard commander replied honestly, reporting to Great Demon Saint, "All of the guards are on high alert, guarding the perimeter of the godly mountain tightly. There is no trace of Ji Tianxing. Beiming Palace and the torture department are the key areas to be monitored, but there are no abnormalities. Ling Xian nodded slightly and asked expressionlessly, "Just now, I detected that someone went in and out of the torture department." The guard commander was startled and quickly explained, "Great Demon Saint, it's a guard of Beiming Palace. He was drunk last night and missed today's duty." After being reprimanded by the guard commander, this person took the opportunity to cause trouble and had a conflict with the guard commander. Thus, the captain of the guards invited 2 executioners to bring the guard to the torture department and punish him severely. Ling Xian frowned and his eyes flashed with anger. He warned in a dignified tone, "At such a critical moment, there are still people who let their guard down. Such a disregard for the law should be punished severely. Pass down the order, tell everyone to watch closely. If anyone makes a mistake, I will chop off his head." The guard commander quickly cupped his hands and said, "This subordinate obeys. This subordinate will take his leave." After bowing, he hurriedly retreated. The secret room returned to silence. An Yu, who was resting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes and looked at Ling Xian. He asked expressionlessly, "It's already the 6th day, but Ji Tianxing still hasn't appeared. I'm afraid he's scared out of his wits and doesn't dare to come." Saying this, the corner of his mouth hooked up in a self-deprecating smile. He shook his head and said, "But this is normal. Anyone with a brain would know that this is a trap. We were too confident and overestimated Ji Tianxing." Ling Xian frowned and didn't refute him. He smiled and said, "Lord An Yu, don't worry. Don't we still have 4 days? After 4 days, if Ji Tianxing still doesn't appear, we will think of other ways. He's in our hands, so we have the initiative. There will be a way to deal with him." An Yu nodded and didn't say anything else. Anyway, if the great demon saint could deal with Ji Tianxing, he would help. If he had to go to Pillar of Heaven's mountains to deal with Ji Tianxing, he would definitely not agree. Unless the demon race paid 3 times the price. Ling Xian wanted to use him for his own selfish reasons. How could he not have selfish motives? How could he not be using the demon race? An hour later, Ji Tianxing finally found traces of Ji Ku, and only then did he stop casting the spell. If it was any other time, he would only need to use his divine sense to envelop the torture department and he would be able to locate Ji Ku immediately. However, it was different now. There were elite soldiers inside and outside the torture department and many sacred arrays were set up. There were also a few martial sages who were secretly using their divine sense to monitor this place. Once he used his divine sense, his identity would be exposed immediately. Therefore, he could only use his divine sense to sense the aura of the heavenly star chain. After all, he was the one who made the heavenly star chain and no one knew it better than him. He could clearly sense that Ji Ku was imprisoned at the end of the 3rd passage on the right, in the most heavily guarded cell. There were many soldiers and ambushes inside and outside the cell. On the surface, there were more than 30 elite guards and more than 10 demon kings hiding in the dark. Once Ji Tianxing appeared, he would be surrounded immediately. If a fight broke out, the martial sages hiding in Beiming Palace would arrive instantly. Chapter 2262. Waiting was a long time. Waiting helplessly for time to pass was even more torturous. An entire day passed. Ji Tianxing had been in the prison all this time, thinking about how to start the rescue. He simulated more than 30 methods in his mind, making deductions and predictions. The result, without exception, was failure. No matter what method he used, it was impossible to deceive the public and get away with it. The final result was that he would be in danger with Ji Ku, besieged by many experts. "I still have 4 days, I need to calm down and think carefully, see if I can find another way. If in the end, I still can't find a safe way, I can only try my best. The devil saints of the devil race are nothing to worry about, only An Yu and the ancestor devil god can threaten me. The ancestor devil god is sleeping in the blood sea abyss, trying to break through to the deity realm. If the commotion caused by the battle is too great, it will definitely appear if it truly threatens the survival of the devil race. As for An Yu, he colluded with the devil race, I wonder if he's in Beiming Palace? If he's not, then I have nothing to worry about. Ji Tianxing thought silently, still maintaining his calm, patiently looking for an opportunity. At the same time, on the desolate plains south of the Devil Race's Divine Mountain, a streak of icy blue light suddenly appeared in the sky filled with black mist. Whoosh! Like thunder, the blue light tore a huge crack in the dark sky. In the next moment, a ball of icy blue light wrapped around two graceful figures, appearing out of nowhere in the sky. These were two peerless, cold, and otherworldly women. One wore an icy blue dress, her hair in a noble bun, and wore an ice crystal crown, her aura sacred and noble. The other wore a snow-white dress, her face beautiful, her temperament cold and elegant. Both of them were tall, peerless beauties, like fairies that had descended from the 9 heavens. All the women in the world, regardless of race, would pale in front of these two peerless beauties, no matter how beautiful they were. Without a doubt, these two were Luo Shui martial god and Yun Yao. The two stood high in the sky on the icy blue light, looking down at the desolate plains below and the divine mountain ahead. Luo Shui martial god's face was cold, his eyes deep and cold. Yun Yao had a worried look on her face, and there was a deep anxiety between her brows. Divine Lord, we heard that Ji Ku is being held captive in Beiming Palace. Tianxing arrived 2 days earlier than us. He must have already started his operation, Yun Yao said in a low voice as she looked at the pitch-black majestic palace at the peak of the sacred mountain. Luo Shui observed for a while before gently shaking his head. He said in a certain tone, from the looks of it, the entire divine mountain is rather peaceful. It does not seem like a great battle happened. Tianxing was not a reckless person. He would definitely not kill his way into Beiming Palace. Based on my understanding of him, he will definitely find a way to hide in Beiming Palace and wait for an opportunity to strike. Without enough confidence, he won't show himself. Yun Yao also understood this and knew Ji Tianxing's style of doing things very well. However, when she heard Luo Shui's words, she could not help but cast a sideways glance at Luo Shui with a complicated gaze. Looks like the Divine Lord has already confirmed Tianxing's identity and knows that his Kenshin's reincarnation. She agreed to come with me to save Tianxing without hesitation. I'm afraid that's also the reason. I wonder what kind of conflict there was between Kenshin and Divine Lord Luo Shui back then. At this moment, dozens of black shadows suddenly appeared on the grayish-brown wasteland. Swish, swish, swish. More than 80 demons in black armor emerged from the ground and flew up into the sky with a murderous look on their faces. Apparently, Luo Shui and Yun Yao had been discovered. However, the two of them had never planned to hide their tracks. With martial god Luo Shui present, they could attack Beiming Palace openly. What was there to be afraid of? Swish, swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, more than 80 black-armored guards rushed to Yun Yao and Luo Shui and attacked with swords and knives. A cold light flashed in Luo Shui's eyes and he was about to counterattack. At this moment, Yun Yao took a step forward and pulled out the reverse water divine sword. She said coldly, "Divine Lord, these minions are not worthy of your attack. Let me deal with them." Luo Shui nodded and said, "All right. You've just broken through to the martial sage realm. Let me see what you're capable of." By the time she finished speaking, Yun Yao was already wielding the reverse water divine sword, transforming into an icy blue light as she charged towards the group of black-armored guards. Sky Star Rain. Yun Yao formed a sword art with her left hand and waved the reverse water divine sword with her right hand. Her clothes fluttered and starlight filled the sky. At this moment, she had the peerless elegance of a fairy and the majestic aura of a peerless goddess. She was simply perfect. The starlight in the sky bloomed and turned into hundreds of dazzling meteors that fell from the sky. More than 80 black-armored guards were immediately drowned by the meteors in the sky. Bam! 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 A series of muffled sounds echoed in the sky above the wasteland. The attacks of the guards were directly smashed by the meteors. Then, the dazzling meteors blasted the crowd into pieces. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Those who were hit by the starlight could not escape the fate of having their physical bodies and spiritual souls shattered. They did not even have the time to scream before they were killed by the meteors in the sky. Boom! 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 The meteors in the sky landed on the wasteland and created hundreds of deep holes in the ground. They connected to form a huge abyss. Monstrous clouds of dust flew out, covering the sky for 300 miles. The ground shook violently and cracks appeared. The sacred mountain, which was a few hundred miles away, was also affected and shook violently. Yoon Yarrow kept the reverse water divine sword and looked down at the ground expressionlessly. There was nothing in the sky in front of her. More than 80 black-armored guards had turned into pieces of flesh and blood and scattered in the ruins and deep holes. She had only used one move to kill more than 80 demon clan guards in an instant. Such terrifying combat strength was not much weaker than Ji Tianxing's. Luo Shui watched carefully. Her eyes lit up and a trace of gratification appeared on her delicate face. Very good. She nodded to Yoon Yarrow and stepped across the sky. She took Yoon Yarrow and went straight to Beiming Palace. At the same time, the guards and powerhouses in Beiming Palace were alarmed. Thousands of elite demon clan guards were lying in ambush on the majestic sacred mountain. Everyone quickly activated the mountain protection array and activated a blood-red light shield with a radius of 300 miles to envelop the sacred mountain. At the same time, more than 500 black-armored guards were divided into more than a dozen teams. They rushed murderously toward Yoon Yarrow and Luo Shui to intercept them. Yoon Yarrow's eyes immediately turned cold. She held the reverse water divine sword and rushed forward fearlessly to meet the attack. Luo Shui followed closely behind. She waved her hand and shot out ice blue light pillars to kill those black-armored guards. Of course, she was always paying attention to Yoon Yarrow's situation and would never let her get hurt. Chapter 2263. Two peerless beauties, gentle as water, faced more than 500 fiendish demon guards. It was a weird scene. But what was even weirder was that the two beauties were invincible. But those fierce and ferocious devil guards fell from the sky and landed on the wasteland like dumplings in a pot. In just 100 breaths of time, the battle was over. Only Luo Shui and Yoon Yarrow were left in the sky. Both of them were safe and sound. Aside from the bloodstains on their clothes, they were unharmed. More than 500 demon guards were all turned into minced meat, scattering on the wasteland. No one was left alive, and no divine soul could escape. Such a horrible scene fell into the eyes of many demon guards. Suddenly, the remaining hundreds of demon guards all hid on the mountain, not daring to rush out of the mountain guarding array. In the Beiming Palace on the mountain peak, the warning horn sounded. Several thousand demon race experts and elites quickly gathered together, assuming the most vigilant defensive posture. Everyone knew that a strong enemy was coming, and a great disaster was coming. Not only that, even Ling Xian, and Yu, and the others who had been hiding in the secret chamber were alarmed. Everyone suddenly opened their eyes. They looked at each other and sneered. Ling Xian said meaningfully, listening to the noise outside, "It should be him. Lord and Yu, I have said that he will definitely come." And Yu nodded with a smile and said with a murderous look, "In that case, let's end this quickly, and get rid of this big trouble as soon as possible." Ba Tuor and the big bald demon saint also rubbed their hands, and murderous aura surged from their bodies. "Let's go and meet him." Ling Xian waved his hand, and led everyone out of the secret chamber. After a while, the four of them came to the square outside the Beiming Palace, and looked down at the situation at the foot of the mountain. Around the square, near the blood-red light shield, a large number of demon guards and elite experts gathered, and they were all ready for battle. When a guard captain saw Ling Xian and the others appear, he quickly went up to them and bowed respectfully. Ling Xian looked down the mountain and asked in a dignified tone, "What happened just now? Is Ji Tianxing here to kill us?" The leader of the guards was startled for a second, then he said in a strange tone, reporting to the great demon saint, "There are indeed two powerful warriors who have killed hundreds of guards in just a few moves. But those two people are not Ji Tianxing, they are two human women." Suddenly hearing this news, Ling Xian suddenly frowned, and his expression became somewhat puzzled. "Ji Tianxing didn't come? Were there only two women? Are you sure you're not mistaken?" The guard captain hurriedly nodded and said in a confident tone, "Great Devil Saint, how could this subordinate be wrong? Those two women swaggered over and everyone saw it with their own eyes. Ling Xian's expression became more and more unsightly as he muttered to himself, Ji Tianxing didn't appear, but he let these two women come here openly. What was he trying to do? Was this a covert scheme? Who were those two women? Martial god Luo Shui? As he thought of this, a hint of fear and worry flashed across his eyes. However, he glanced at Anu beside him, and immediately felt much more at ease. With Anu, a god realm warrior, there should be no problem even if the ancestor demon god didn't appear. Ling Xian thought in his heart, and dispelled his worries. At this moment, an icy blue and a silver-white dazzling light flew over from the sky above the wasteland. Swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, the two dazzling lights flew to the peak of the sacred mountain and stopped. After the light faded, two graceful and cold figures appeared. Luo Shui and Yun Yarrow stood in the sky, 3,000 feet away from Ling Xian and the others, separated by a layer of blood-red light shield. Although there were only two of them, facing the entire sacred mountain and thousands of demon warriors, they didn't show any fear or worry. On the contrary, their auras were quite strong and domineering, and they didn't take the others seriously at all. Anu, Ma Tuor, and the others all realized that something was wrong, and frowned in confusion. Why are there two women? Where's Ji Tianxing? Didn't he kill his way here? Why don't I see him? Ling Xian also frowned, and muttered to himself, damn it, Luo Shui is really here. That bitch, she has to stick her nose in everything. If Anu can kill her, it would be great. Ling Xian didn't forget that half a year ago, Luo Shui only sent a clone here, and it brought disaster to Beiming Palace. Now that Luo Shui's real body was here, wouldn't it turn the world upside down? Thinking of this, Ling Xian looked at Anu and transmitted his voice, Lord Anu, those two women are not simple. The one in the white dress is Ji Tianxing's wife. The woman in the blue dress is the Luo Shui Divine Nation's Divine Master, the Luo Shui Martial God. If we can kill Luo Shui, the Luo Shui Divine Nation will definitely fall apart, and we can immediately lead our troops south to seize the endless territories. Of course, the Luo Shui Divine Nation is the weakest among the three divine nations. Luo Shui's strength is also the weakest among the three martial gods, and he doesn't pose a threat to you at all. Ling Xian said it casually, but he deliberately exaggerated the gains from killing Luo Shui, in order to instigate Anu. However, Anu had suffered at his hands before, so how could he be so easily fooled? Oh, is that so? Anu raised his eyebrows, and a playful smile appeared on his face, but he didn't say anything else. He didn't pay attention to Luo Shui's strength, nor did he care about the temptation Ling Xian mentioned. In any case, he acted as if it had nothing to do with him, and he wasn't in a hurry to make a move. Ling Xian saw through his thoughts, and couldn't help but feel angry, but he couldn't be too hasty. At this moment, Luo Shui looked down at Beiming Palace from above, and said in a cold voice, Ling Xian, this god came here today only to say one thing. Listen well. Immediately hand over Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku, and this god can treat it as if nothing happened. Otherwise, this god doesn't mind destroying the entire divine mountain. The cold and deep voice spread throughout the entire divine mountain, and reverberated between the heavens and the earth. The formless divine sense pressure caused many of the demon race experts to feel fear, and their faces showed fear. Ling Xian didn't doubt Luo Shen's words at all. Previously, Luo Shen had only sent a clone, and it had destroyed Beiming Palace. Now that his real body had arrived, destroying the divine mountain would be a piece of cake. However, Ling Xian had an idea, and he immediately had an idea. He looked at Luo Shui with a cold smile, and with an arrogant attitude, he laughed wildly and said, ha ha ha. Luo Shui, you are too arrogant, and you must be blind. Why don't you see who is beside this lord? This is Lord Anu, a true god realm expert. With Lord Anu here, don't you dare be presumptuous, or else you will die on the spot. Ling Xian's aura was very confident and overbearing. However, Anu, who was beside him, immediately frowned, and his face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and his eyes flashed with a cold light. Chapter 2264. Ling Xian's words were indeed effective. Luo Shui immediately frowned and looked at Anu beside him. His cold eyes were filled with intense hostility and murderous intent. and Yu knew that it would be difficult for him to escape today. He cursed Ling Xian in his heart for being despicable, but he could not fall out with him on the spot. He could only remain silent. At this moment, Luo Shui coldly shouted, "Ling Xian, I gave you a chance. Since you're so eager, I'll fulfill your wish." As her voice fell, she waved her palms and sent out 2 mountain-sized icy blue palm shadows toward the blood-red light shield. Back then, in order to avenge Luo Li, she had sent her doppelganger here and destroyed Beiming Palace. Of course, she knew that the protective array of the sacred mountain was a holy array. Only the abyss of the blood sea behind the sacred mountain was protected by a divine array. Bam! Bam! With a deafening sound, the 2 icy blue palm shadows slammed into the blood-red light shield. Instantly, the blood-red light shield within a radius of 300 miles trembled violently from the impact. Layers of ripples spread out. The icy blue palm shadows shattered and turned into cold light that scattered in the sky. However, the places that were hit by the icy blue palm shadows had also sunk into 2 huge craters, and the surroundings were filled with dense cracks. At most, 2 more hits and the blood-red light shield would be smashed to pieces. Seeing this scene, the thousands of demon elites on the sacred mountain were shocked and worried. The expressions of Ling Xian, Ma Tuo, and the others also changed drastically, revealing deep worry. Without hesitation, Luo Shui raised her hands again and punched the blood-red light shield. Endless icy blue brilliance crazily accumulated in her fists and condensed into 2 palace-sized fist lights. The fist lights were condensed to the extreme and seemed to be solid. They emitted a bone-chilling aura and contained the power to destroy heaven and earth. Boom! Crack! When the 2 fist lights hit the blood-red light shield, an earth-shattering explosion sounded in the sky and spread for thousands of miles. 2 huge holes were blasted into the huge blood-red light shield on the spot. The cracks in the surroundings quickly spread out like a spider web. Endless icy blue brilliance and blood-red light shards burst out in the sky and spread out along with the shockwave. The mountain-protecting grand array of the sacred mountain was thus destroyed by Luo Shui. She and Yun Yaro's figures flashed and were about to enter the 2 gaps. When he saw this, Ling Xian immediately shouted anxiously, "Quickly stop them. We can't let them enter the divine mountain." He was well aware that Yun Yaro was one thing, but once Luo Shui entered the divine mountain, the consequences would be unimaginable. The shockwaves from the battle between the 2 sides were absolutely destructive, enough to destroy Beiming Palace once again. In fact, the entire divine mountain would be razed to the ground. At that time, the demon race would suffer heavy losses, and it would not be as simple as losing a few thousand elite guards. However, Ling Xian's angry shout rang out, and the order was passed down. None of the thousands of elite experts and guards around the square dared to move. Previously, everyone had witnessed Luo Shui and Yun Yaro killing more than 500 guards in an instant. Who would be so stupid as to rush out and throw away their lives? When Ling Xian saw that the guards were timid and afraid, he was filled with rage. He rushed into the sky with Ba Tuor and the newly promoted demon saint. "Luo Shui, I will not repeat the same mistake today. Don't you dare act atrociously here." As he spoke, he did not forget to send a voice transmission to Anu. "Lord Anu, this woman is one of the 3 martial gods. No matter what, you must stop her. If you let her destroy our plan, then our cooperation will be gone, and your situation will be worrying." In fact, even if Ling Xian did not remind him, Anu understood this point. After all, he was an invader. If he wanted to gain a foothold here, he needed the help of the demon race. Therefore, he also flew into the sky without hesitation and waved his hand to attack Luo Shui. "Crimson Moon Kill," Anu shouted in a low voice. His eyes turned into 2 dark red flames that flickered. His body surged with a dark red brilliance that soared into the sky. His palms shot out endless killing intent, condensing into a huge crimson moon that blasted towards Luo Shui. Ling Xian, Ba Tuor, and Baldy also used their secret techniques, releasing a bloody light that covered the sky and earth, enveloping Luo Shui's figure. Luo Shui was surrounded by 4 powerhouses, but she was still fearless. Her body emitted an icy brilliance as she coldly shouted with an expressionless face. "Virtuous like water, the will of heaven punishes the demon. As she spoke, her palms struck out a mysterious spell, drawing a dazzling blue light in front of her. Finally, when she put her palms together in front of her chest, her entire body burst forth with endless icy blue light. Boom! Following a deafening explosion, a monstrous cold light exploded like a mushroom cloud. The bloody light and demonic shadows that filled the sky were instantly dispersed by the icy blue brilliance. Even the crimson moon that Anu had released was shattered on the spot. Instantly, Anu, Ling Xian, Ba Tuor, and the others were all sent flying by Luo Shui, their faces full of shock. Especially Anu, his eyes suddenly widened as he shouted in disbelief, Luo Shui, the weakest of the three martial gods, actually has such powerful strength. At this moment, he suddenly doubted Ling Xian's words. There was only one thought in his mind. Ling Xian was a complete liar and scoundrel. Not a single word from his mouth could be trusted. However, now was not the time to pursue this matter. Since Anu wanted to cooperate with the demon race, he had to stand on the same side as Ling Xian. He was very unconvinced and charged at Luo Shui once again, pulling out the dark red sword at his waist and slashing out several sword lights that could split the heavens and earth. The blood-red sword lights were very strange and contained an invisible power, as if controlling the heavens and earth to suppress Luo Shui. Luo Shui felt the pressure increase. Only now did she realize that Anu's methods were extraordinary and that the power he used was also very strange. She solemnly waved her hand and struck out a mysterious spell, slapping out hundreds of icy blue seals with her palms. Ling Xian also charged over, releasing a monstrous sea of blood and 9 demonic shadows to surround Luo Shui. Bang bang bang! The icy blue seals and the blood-red sword lights collided, creating a loud explosion. Just as the blood-red sword lights were defeated, Ling Xian's spell attack struck Luo Shui. She was besieged and had no choice but to use her secret skills to block and counterattack. Ling Xian and Anu temporarily stabilized their position and methodically launched their attacks to restrain Luo Shui. On the other side, Ba Tuor and the big-balled demon saint knew that they could not threaten Luo Shui, so they joined forces to attack Yun Yao. From their point of view, Yun Yao had just broken through to the martial sage realm and only had the strength of a rank 1 martial sage. She should not be difficult to deal with. If they could take Yun Yao down, they could use her life to threaten Luo Shui. This way, there would be a turn for the better. However, when the two of them joined forces to attack Yun Yao, they realized that things were not as they had imagined. Although Yun Yao only had the strength of a rank 1 martial sage, her combat strength was extremely strong. Not only had he mastered all kinds of secret techniques, but he also had a genuine divine sword. Chapter 2265. Anu and Ling Xian besieged Luo Shui. Ba Tuor and Da Baldi besieged Yun Yao. The two sides fought fiercely in the sky above the wilderness. The sky fell and the earth cracked, and the sun and moon lost their light. The violent and devastating shockwaves spread in all directions like stormy waves. The deafening noises kept exploding, reverberating between heaven and earth. Thousands of demon guards and elites were holed up on the sacred mountain to watch the battle. A battle of this level was not something they could interfere with. Even if they were caught in the aftermath of the battle, they might die on the spot. Inside the Department of Torture. Since the commotion of the battle spread, many guards hurried to the outside of Beiming Palace. The experts and powerhouses lying in ambush were also on high alert, guarding against the invasion of foreign enemies at all times. As a result, the internal defense power of the Department of Torture was weakened by a lot. Soon, a quarter of an hour passed. The battle outside had not stopped, and it was becoming more and more intense. The entire sacred mountain kept shaking, causing the demons inside and outside the Department of Torture to feel uneasy. At the same time, Ji Tianxing, who had been silent all this time, suddenly opened his eyes. He looked towards the south with bright eyes, as if his eyes could see through the palace and darkness, and saw the battle in the sky above the wilderness. The earth-shattering sounds of battle and the surging waves of dharmic powers were extremely familiar to him. It's Luo Shui and Yao Yao. Why are they here? His expression changed immediately, and his eyes flashed with deep surprise. He immediately understood after thinking for a while. I clearly trapped Yao Yao in the secret room. Could it be that she broke my array and escaped from the secret room? As for Luo Shui, Yarrow Yarrow must have invited him. Thinking of this, his mood was very complicated. He felt both guilty and touched. Luo Shui and Yarrow Yarrow are fighting with Ling Xian and An Yu, attracting everyone's attention. This is the best opportunity for me. Ji Tianxing no longer hesitated and attacked without hesitation. His whole body lit up with a bright golden light, and he suddenly burst out with a surging power. With a series of ding-ding-ding sounds, the chains wrapped around his body instantly shattered into a pile of debris. His figure flashed and rushed to the door of the cell. He kicked the door made of magic iron. Clang! The pitch-black door, which was more than 3 meters tall, was directly kicked away by him and twisted into a ball like a fried dough twist. The sudden turn of events woke up the guards at the entrance of the passage. The guards in blood-red armor roared angrily and rushed over while brandishing their swords and sabers. Ji Tianxing turned into a black shadow and rushed forward as fast as lightning. Swish! Swish! As he passed through the crowd, he flicked out golden sword chi from all 10 of his fingers, stabbing at the guards' foreheads. The next moment, he rushed out of the dark passage and disappeared into the darkness. As for the guards, their bodies stiffened as they stood rooted to the ground. After a while, they fell to the ground with a thud, their vitality completely gone. There was a finger-sized bloody hole in each of their foreheads, and demon blood was constantly flowing out. The sword chi released by Ji Tianxing pierced through their foreheads and directly destroyed their divine souls. Clean and neat, fast, ruthless, and accurate. After 2 breaths, Ji Tianxing turned into a black shadow and rushed into the 3rd passage. At the end of this passage, there was a spacious cell where Ji Ku was imprisoned. The passage and the outside of the cell were heavily guarded, and there were more than a dozen tribulation stage demon lords among them. When Ji Tianxing rushed into the passage, the guards had already realized that the situation was not good. More than a dozen armored guards, waving their swords and halberds, rushed over murderously. At this moment, Ji Tianxing no longer had any scruples. There was no need for him to hide his identity and strength. "You're courting death." A cold light flashed in his eyes as he shouted in a low voice. At the same time, his body turned into an illusory black shadow and rushed toward the group of guards with rolling thunder and sword light. Swoosh! 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 A burst of dazzling sword light flashed, accompanied by the sound of thunder, illuminating the passage. When his figure rushed to the door of the cell, the dozen guards had already fallen to the ground. All of them were covered in blood, and there were many broken limbs scattered on the ground. Their divine souls had been destroyed by Ji Tianxing, and they were all dead. Ji Tianxing rushed to the door of the cell and looked at the black stone door. The door of this cell had obviously been specially modified, and there were several saint-level array formations on it. Even if Ji Tianxing wanted to break the array, it would not be possible in a short time. Moreover, the 10 demon lords lying in ambush outside the door had already released earth-shattering Dharma spells. A few demonic dragons condensed from blood-red light and dozens of sword shadows surged over like a monstrous flood, immediately drowning his figure. Ji Tianxing's body bloomed with golden light, forming an oval shield. Boom! 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 A series of muffled explosions reverberated in the tunnel. The attacks of the 10 demon lords were all blocked by the golden shield, and they could not hurt Ji Tianxing at all. A powerful and violent shockwave exploded in the tunnel, causing cracks to appear on the ground and walls. The entire torture department began to shake from the tremors. There were a few blood-armored guards around, but they only had the strength of the Essence Soul Realm, and they were shattered on the spot. The 10 demon lords did not stop, and once again released terrifying Dharma spells, blasting toward Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing was completely enraged. A black light flashed in his right palm, and he drew out the sword of Burial of Heaven. 7 Stars Sword. With a furious roar, he swung his sword and slashed out 49 starry sword lights at the 10 demon monarchs of various forms. Swish! 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 The dazzling sword lights were like shooting stars cutting through the darkness, blooming with the most dazzling brilliance. In the blink of an eye, those demon lords wearing black robes, armor, or looking like demonic beasts were torn apart by the sword lights. The bodies of the 10 demon lords were destroyed, and none of them were spared. The souls of 6 of them were also killed, and only 4 souls escaped in a sorry state. Ji Tianxing did not chase after them. He stared coldly at the door of the cell, holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands, and slashed down fiercely. "Open for me!" Boom! Crack! Amidst a deafening boom, the starry sword light, which was 100 feet long, split the door of the cell in half, and shattered rocks flew everywhere. The terrifying impact caused half of the torture department to collapse, turning it into a pile of ruins. Ji Tianxing passed through the broken stone door, ignoring the falling rocks, and rushed into the cell. He saw a blood-stained copper pillar on the altar in the corner of the cell. A woman with disheveled hair and bloody body was tied to the copper pillar by a dozen chains. She had suffered some kind of cruel torture, and she did not look human, and she was unconscious. Chapter 2266. Without a doubt. That blooded, frail woman was Ji Ku. Moreover, the 8 demon lords also had the mission of destroying the corpse. Ling Xian had already made plans. If Ji Tianxing were to rush here to save Ji Ku, he would not be able to escape. Those 8 demon lords were about to activate the array and use the soul-incinerating purple fire to completely kill Ji Ku. Ji Tianxing instantly understood when he saw this scene. A towering fury immediately exploded in his chest. His eyes were as red as blood, and his entire body surged with towering fury. "Die!" He roared like a great bell and brazenly charged at the 8 demon lords like a raging ball of bloody fire. "Do an you! Heaven seizing palm!" He recklessly swung the sword of burial of heaven and slashed out 2 dark golden sword lights at the 4 demon lords on the left. His left hand fiercely swatted out a golden dragon claw at the 4 demon lords on the right. The 2 sides were too close, and Ji Tianxing's furious attack was also extremely fast. Those 8 demon lords were unable to dodge at all and were instantly struck by the sword lights and dragon claws. Bam bam bam! A deafening boom exploded like the rumbling of thunder. 3 demon lords were cut in half by the sword lights, and dark purple demon blood spurted out. The other 4 demon lords were directly smashed into meat paste by the dragon claws. The last demon lord was relatively luckier and scrambled to hide in a corner of the cell. Before he could rejoice, Ji Tianxing stabbed him in the forehead. His head exploded, and his soul shattered on the spot. He died on the spot. At the same time, a destructive shockwave spread out in all directions, instantly shattering the entire prison cell. With a loud rumble, the torture department that was on the verge of collapse finally collapsed. Countless ravines split open in the ground, and the palace collapsed, smashing down countless rocks and bricks. Within a radius of 3,000 meters, only broken walls and rubble remained. Endless smoke and dust soared into the sky, obscuring this area in a state of chaos. However, amidst the surging grey fog, there was a dark purple flame that was more than 10 meters tall that was particularly eye-catching. It was the bone-chilling, terrifying soul-incinerating purple flame. Not only could the fire burn up flesh and blood, the most vicious effect of the fire was that it could penetrate the protection of the body and magical equipment and directly burn the soul. Obviously, Ji Tianxing was still one step behind. Before the 8 demon monarchs died, they successfully activated the array on the altar and released the soul-burning purple fire. Their mission was to not let Ji Ku live even if they had to die on the spot. Shua. Ji Tianxing passed through the smoke and gravel, rushing to the front of the soul-burning purple flame. He watched helplessly as the 3-jong-tall purple torch enveloped Ji Ku's body. Her blood-stained robes and long hair were instantly burned to ashes by the purple flames. In the next moment, her body would be reduced to ashes. Ji Tianxing's heart was burning with anxiety. He immediately made a hand seal and released rays of starlight into Ji Ku's body. Star attraction art. In the next moment, the heavenly star chain in Ji Ku's mind was awakened and activated by him. Shua. The heavenly star chain burst out with cold, dazzling starlight, enveloping Ji Ku from the inside out. The starlight formed an oval-shaped shield, protecting Ji Ku and isolating her from the soul-incinerating purple flame. She was temporarily safe. Ji Tianxing finally heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly activated the power of the heaven-mending orb and struck out a dense white light with his palm. Whoosh! The sacred and majestic white light enveloped the 3 jong tall soul-incinerating purple flame and quickly devoured it. The surging soul-incinerating purple flame instantly disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye and was extinguished in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianxing hurriedly took out the sword of burial of heaven and cut off the chains around Ji Ku's body. He then carried her down from the copper pillar. Only then did he realize that the copper pillar was covered in chopstick-long spikes that had pierced Ji Ku's back full of hideous bloody holes. Cuckoo! Ji Tianxing was both furious and distressed. He couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice. However, Ji Ku's soul was too heavily injured. She was still unconscious and had yet to wake up. Ji Tianxing turned his head and looked around. He saw hundreds of demon race experts rushing over from all directions. The demon race guards and elite experts charged over with murderous intent, letting out deafening battle cries. He didn't have the time to save Ji Ku. He could only put her into the Sword World and have the Golden Mountain King settle her down in peaceful Earth City. Then, he sent an order to Ancestor Sanju, telling him to hurry to peaceful Earth City and treat Ji Ku's injuries. By the time he finished arranging everything, more than 800 demon race guards and experts had already closed in and surrounded the ruins. Kill him. This person isn't one of us. His Ji Tianxing in disguise. Everyone, don't hold back. Work together and kill him, the captain of the guards and the demon monarchs shouted at the top of their lungs. Ji Tianxing lowered his head and glanced at himself. Our man's physical body was already in tatters. He simply abandoned this body and took out his main body from the sword world. Whoosh! In a flash of light, his soul returned to his main body. He transformed into a handsome white-robed youth and appeared in the air above the ruins. The badly mutilated body of the demon lay powerlessly in the ruins, covered by dust. Ji Tianxing placed his left hand behind his back and gripped the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand. His sharp gaze swept over the surroundings. Everyone must die, he shouted darkly, his body erupting with killing intent that could shake the heavens. It had been many years since he had been so angry. His killing intent had almost taken over his mind. Ji Ku's tragic fate filled his chest with endless anger and killing intent. Only by killing all the demons on Divine Mountain could he calm down a little. He suddenly raised the sword of burial of heaven and pointed it at the dark sky. He roared, 10,000 swords of stars, heed my command. Kill. Hearing his words and seeing his reaction, many demons were stunned. Everyone frowned in confusion, not understanding what he was doing. Just by pointing his sword at the sky and shouting, he could kill people. Everyone scratched their heads in confusion. Only a few demon clan experts immediately had a bad premonition, and a strong sense of fear rose in their hearts. In the next moment, the dark sky suddenly lit up with starlight like the stars of a summer night. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Tens of thousands of rays of starlight fell like meteors, carrying with them the power to destroy the world. At the peak of Divine Mountain, the night sky within 1,000 miles was immediately illuminated. Only now did the demons realize that it was tens of thousands of giant swords of stars. Everyone was shocked and wanted to turn and flee. But the invisible sword essence that suppressed the world enveloped everyone and made them unable to move. Boom 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 boom. There was an earth-shaking explosion. Tens of thousands of sword lights came down and instantly drowned out the ruins, including the nearby Beiming Palace. Immediately, thousands of demons were drowned in starlight and turned into dregs by the sword lights. They died without a complete corpse. The torture department also ceased to exist. The ruins on the ground turned into endless smoke and dust, leaving behind only a huge abyss-like pit. Chapter 2267. Before this, all the demons knew that Ji Tianxing was the greatest enemy of the demon race. This person was extremely strong. On the northern battlefield, he had once slaughtered millions of demons. But just how strong was he? The demons on the Divine Mountain had never seen it with their own eyes and did not have a clear idea. After all, they had not rushed to the front lines to participate in the war. Now, they finally saw it with their own eyes. Ji Tianxing only used one sword move to command 10,000 starry sword lights to instantly kill thousands of elite demons. Not only was the torture department completely destroyed, Even more than half of Beiming Palace was destroyed and turned into ruins. Such a terrifying and peerless power left everyone dumbstruck. When they came back to their senses, only endless fear and lingering fear remained in their hearts. Many people even secretly rejoiced that they had not been in the torture department so that they could live until now. Even though the demons were cold-blooded, cruel, brave, and violent, but in the end, they were still intelligent creatures, and they would still feel fear. After a long while, when the dust and magic power in the sky had dissipated, Ji Tianxing's figure appeared and stood murderously in the sky. He looked coldly in the distance at the demon guards and experts near Beiming Palace. Wherever he looked, the guards and experts of the devil race subconsciously backed away. Such a scene made many demons feel deeply humiliated. Dozens of hot-blooded and fearless devils couldn't bear this silent humiliation. They shouted and dashed towards Ji Tianxing. "Everyone, don't be afraid, let's attack together. For the glory of our race, we will not retreat. Kill. No matter how strong he is only one person. We have many people, we are not afraid of him. Don't forget the great demon saint's reward. Whoever kills him will be given the position of deputy commander and 500 million in cultivation resources." More than 40 demon experts charged at Ji Tianxing without any regard for their own safety, not forgetting to shout at the top of their lungs. But they were immediately met with tragedy. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Ji Tianxing waved his right hand and raised the burial of heaven, sending out dozens of cold lights. More than 80 starry sword rays instantly streaked across the sky and pierced those devil experts. With a series of peng 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 muffled sounds, more than 40 demon experts were torn into pieces by the sword light on the spot. Flesh and blood swirled in the air, and the dazzling sword light interweaved to form a magnificent and shocking scene. With a single move, everyone was smashed into pieces, their bodies and souls destroyed. Seeing the fate of these demon race experts, everyone kept quiet out of fear, a chill running down their spines. Originally, there were still a few demons who were infected by their hot-bloodedness, and a strong fighting spirit ignited in their hearts. However, after witnessing the tragic deaths of these people, their hot-bloodedness and fighting spirit were instantly extinguished. Ji Tianxing's murderous aura still hadn't dissipated. He turned into a golden shadow and rushed into the crowd, starting a massacre. "Swing your sword. Heaven-cleaving sword. Heavenly dragon palm. Broken moon sword." He waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand and slashed out an earth-shattering sword light. His left palm struck out an enormous dark golden dragon claw, continuously slamming into the crowd. Loud rumbling sounds erupted continuously, reverberating endlessly on the mountain peak. Dazzling spell light also illuminated the peak of the divine mountain. Violent shock waves spread out in all directions, blowing up the gravel and dust on the ground. In a short 10 breaths of time, the crowd was scattered in all directions. 80% of the demon race were killed on the spot, dying without an intact corpse, turning into dregs all over the ground. There weren't many survivors left, and they were also scared out of their wits, fleeing in panic. In the eyes of the demon race, Ji Tianxing, this white-clothed killing god, was more terrifying than the world's most terrifying devil. Apart from the great fiend sage and the ancestral fiend god, probably no one could stop him. But Ji Tianxing didn't let those demon race go. Holding the sword of burial of heaven, he pursued and killed. Boom. Boom boom. Bang 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 bang. Sword light bloomed unceasingly, and muffled sounds rang out continuously. Batch after batch of demon race collapsed in a pool of blood, dying miserably. Ji Tianxing went on a killing spree on the mountain peak, as if he entered a no-man's land, sweeping everything before him. About 15 minutes later, he killed more than 2,000 demon race members in succession. The few hundred demon race members who were lucky enough to survive all fled in all directions, hiding in various concealed places on the divine mountain. If he pursued them one by one, it would definitely waste a lot of time. Ji Tianxing didn't want to waste time, so he gave up on the pursuit. He raised his head to look at the bloody light barrier in the sky with a radius of 150 kilometers. Heaven-splitting sword. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and unleashed all of his power, slashing out a 1,000-foot-long giant sword with all his might. Bam! The dark golden giant sword ruthlessly struck the bloody light barrier, exploding with an earth-shaking bang. Immediately, a huge crack was split open on the bloody light barrier. Ji Tianxing's figure flashed, passing through that crack, and flew to the sky above the wasteland. He frowned as he looked in front of him, seeing An Yu, Ling Xian and the rest besieging Luo Shuai and Yun Yao. Luo Shuai was fighting against two opponents, but he wasn't at a disadvantage at all. He was actually able to fend off An Yu and Ling Xian's attacks. Her blue dress was stained with a few streaks of blood, as if she was slightly injured. However, An Yu and Ling Xian were severely injured, their bodies covered in blood. Especially Ling Xian, there were at least 10 wounds on his body, all of which were so deep that his bones could be seen. His black robe had long been soaked in dark purple demon blood. However, Yun Yao was in a precarious situation. She was besieged by Ma Tuor and Da Baldi, and even with the water reverse divine sword, she was at a disadvantage. After all, she had just broken through to the martial sage realm. Ma Tuor was a rank 7 martial sage, while Da Baldi was a rank 2 martial sage. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing didn't hesitate to rush over and join the battle. 5-colored divine lightning. He teleported behind Da Baldi, and his left palm shot out a 5-colored lightning beam. He waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand, and a dazzling cold radiance shot out. Da Baldi sensed that he was about to die, and his expression changed drastically. He waved a pair of large hatchets, and a blood-red radiance filled the sky. Bam! With a muffled sound, the blood-red light blade blocked the 5-colored divine lightning, and sparks filled the sky. Da Baldi heaved a sigh of relief, thinking that he had dodged a bullet. However, in the next instant, he felt a sharp pain in his chest, and his expression changed. Boom! A cluster of dazzling starlight suddenly exploded in his chest, turning into a huge mushroom cloud that soared into the sky. Da Baldi's sturdy body was instantly smashed into pieces, and a large amount of blood splattered out. A dazzling purple spiritual soul flew out from the broken pieces of the blood rain, and ran away in a panic. Originally, he had wanted to run back to the holy mountain to heal himself. However, the peak of the holy mountain was a mess, and Beiming Palace and the punishment department had been destroyed. He didn't dare to run back to the holy mountain, as that would be suicide. However, even if he ran to the empty north, it would be useless. Ji Tianxing teleported and caught up with Da Baldi, and he waved his sword. Bam!